DC.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
A really important thing about GB News, and it's brought something completely different to the landscape.
The mainstream is all about keeping the status quo as it is, ticking along quite nicely. They don't want to ask difficult questions.
GB News exists because there is a desperate need for fearless journalism that puts the people first.
GB News came on the scene as a disruptor, and it has always been a disruptor ever since.
Journalism in this country has been a cosy world full of groupthink until now.
Well, the reality is that most British journalists are afraid. That's not GB News.
Journalism is journalism at the end of the day, and we're not here to serve any masters. Our masters are our audience.
We're here to talk about things in a way that have never been broadcast on British airways before.
Do not miss a moment on GB News.
The #1 news channel in the country.
Good morning, hope you're well. Thanks for your company. Live from Washington DC, this is GB News with the stories shaping Britain and America.
Well, what is happening is the biggest reorganisation of councils for 50 years.
Breaking news tonight, Sir Keir Starmer's under mounting pressure to sack Health Secretary Wes Streeting as new analysis suggests Labour would have faced absolute wipeout if the delayed local council elections had gone ahead.
The trust with the Tory party is gone.
Robert Jenrick hits out at the Tories in an exclusive interview with GB News just 24 hours after that massive defection to Reform UK. And in moments, I'll be sitting down with a former Conservative minister, Sir Conor Burns, to ask whether this defection is a one-off or maybe the start of something much bigger. Why is it in Britain's interests and the West's for this regime to fall? As protests against the Islamic regime in Iran intensify and the death toll climbs, I ask Iran's exiled Crown Prince about why the regime must fall for the safety of not just Iran and the West, but Britain too.
The so-called Islamic Republic is not the government of Iran.
Reza Pahlavi is now also imploring President Donald Trump to follow through with strikes on Iran. We'll also be bringing you the latest on that developing situation in London. Pictures on your screen now if you're watching on telly as anti-government protesters clash with police outside the Iranian embassy. And I'll tell you why an almighty row's broken out between Ryanair boss Michael O'Leary and the world's richest man, Elon Musk.
Was the guy who advocated to getting Donald Trump elected. I would pay no attention whatsoever to Elon Musk. He's an idiot.
Who are you backing? My money's on Elon. I'm Ben Leo, and this is The Late Show Live. Welcome along to The Late Show Live. Good morning to you. Joining me this evening in Washington DC will be, very shortly, my panel of political strategist Matthew Hurt and the Washington correspondent for the Daily Telegraph, Connor Stringer. And joining me live down the line from London is journalist and broadcaster Christo Foufas. Hello, Christo. Thanks for your company tonight. Right, let's start with some breaking news we're hearing this evening, shall we? Sir Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, is reportedly facing calls from cabinet ministers to sack his Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, for disloyalty, with one cabinet minister telling the Times tomorrow that the PM needs to learn from Kemi Badenoch in her sacking of Robert Jenrick. Through a spokesman for Wes Streeting has accused Starmer of, Starmer's allies at least, of briefing against him. Number 10 have tonight said he remains a key player in the government team. That's as the Telegraph newspaper reveals that Labour would face a wipeout if the cancelled local elections were to go ahead. So get this, the party is set to lose half of the seats if those elections did go ahead. Of course, they've been cancelled by Starmer in May, and it would have shown, for the most part, Reform absolutely wiping the floor with their rivals. We'll be getting stuck into that very shortly. But moving on to our main news this evening. Former Conservative Minister and Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick, the Tory superstar, well, he says his defection to Reform UK is part of uniting the right. It followed his sacking by Tory leader Kemi Badenoch over what she called clear, irrefutable evidence that he was conspiring to jump ship anyway. This is what Mr Jenrick exclusively told GB News a little earlier today.
The next general election is going to be a very important one. And the public will be presented with Starmer, or whichever left-wing non-entity has replaced him by that stage, or Nigel. It's not going to be Kemi Badenoch. It wouldn't have been Robert Jenrick if I was leader of the Tory party. It's a simple choice. It's Nigel or bust. The question for me was, do you continue to put personal loyalty to the Conservative Party, which is very deep. I've been in this party, or was in it, since I was 16 years of age. But do you continue to put that above the national interest? And I came to the conclusion over a period of time that you've got to put the country first. And if you want to get rid of Labour, if you want to fix the country, fix the challenges that everyone's facing right now, people feel poor, don't they? Because their incomes are going nowhere, the bills are rising, out of control immigration, the small boats are still coming, town centres. Look, so down at the moment, crime on the streets, particularly here in London. If you want to fix these challenges, you've got to get a reforming government in after the next election. We've got to have a government that's going to change this country for the better, and the only way that can be delivered is if we have Nigel and Reform. So every patriotic person in this country, all of your brilliant viewers on GB News, even if they have voted for the Tory party, as I have, obviously, election after election, have got to put that to one side and say, this is the choice. We've got to get this party into government. This is uniting the right. It's not a pact or a deal. I know that you and I have debated that many, many times over the course of the last year. And, you know, there were times where I thought maybe that's possible. But it isn't realistic. At the end of the day, the trust with the Tory party is gone. And so many people are so angry and frustrated and disillusioned with the Tory party, they're never going to vote. And in fact, if Reform were to say, oh, we're going to go into some kind of arrangement with the Tory party, rightly, those people would say, you're not my party anymore. So the way to get rid of Labour and to fix the country is for the right to unite around Nigel and Reform. That is ultimately why I made this decision.
All right, that was Robert Jenrick speaking to Christopher Hope a bit earlier today. Meanwhile, exclusive polling for GB News suggests a mixed picture with regards to his defection. So 1 in 3 Brits say the defections from the Tories improved their view of Reform. So this is all Tories, not just Robert Jenrick. 17% say it worsens their view. Actually, that's quite low in my book. Whilst the majority, 51%, say it makes no difference or they're unsure. Well, joining me exclusively in the studio tonight is the former Conservative Minister and British Trade Envoy to the US, Sir Conor Burns. Sir Conor, great to see you. Thank you for your company. Welcome to DC. What are you doing here, first of all? What are you up to?
I'm doing some private sector stuff in the US. I spend about half my time now in the US, and I'm in DC specifically to lay the foundations for a big G20 related sovereign investment fund summit we're going to do a little bit later this year.
Good stuff. Sounds lots of fun. What may not be so much fun is what's happening back home in Blighty with the Tories. Or maybe you'll argue against that. What's your take on Robert Jenrick's defection to Reform UK?
Robert's been on a journey. Robert's defected multiple times already between different camps within the Conservative Party as the wind and the tide has ebbed and flowed. I don't think it's terribly surprising. I mean, this is something that's been foretold more regularly than the coming of Jesus in the Christmas story.
Who foretold it, when and where? For how long?
Your profession have been writing about this for a long time. Anybody who's been associated with the parliamentary party knows that Robert and indeed his wife have long had an eye on the main chance. And it's interesting, isn't it, that this is happening now that Kemi's position seems to be solidifying.
Yes.
So he wasn't about to step in, as he hoped, to the Tory leadership.
So you're saying it's not about ideology for Jenrick, it was just about leadership. He wants to be the big man, he wants to be the leader of the Tories, he didn't win the leadership race. Kemi seems to be turning a corner, so he thought, OK, may as well go to Reform. But in that case, then, do you think he has eyes on Reform leadership at some point?
Oh, I'd be very wary if I was Nigel Farage. I mean, Rob has always got an eye on the main chance. I like Rob, right? He's a Tigre-ish little character, but the phrase about being the bride at every wedding and the corpse at every funeral could have been written for Rob. Rob likes to be at the centre of attention. Now, on a serious point, it's not all that long ago, in one of the last speeches I made in Parliament, in an adjournment debate, that Rob was the immigration minister, and I was raising the case of a young lad who just about to join the British Armed Forces, knifed to death on the streets of my constituency by a so-called asylum seeker who'd lied about his age.
He'd committed 2 murders previously in Serbia.
He committed 2 murders. Yeah. He'd come in lying about his age. They stuck him into a secondary school with children.
I remember.
He was out, fighting with knives. It was a systematic failure of border force, police, social services, council. And I was saying to Rob as the minister, let's get the Home Office's report of this into the public domain. Let's learn the lessons. And Rob, oh, well, we can't do that. We don't publish reports. So sometimes people are a bit more forthcoming when they're out of office than maybe they actually were using the office that was gifted to them.
Yeah. Was it Robert Buckland today who said Jenrick was now a pound shop Enoch Powell or something similar to that? Did you see those comments?
I didn't see those comments. I think that's unfair. I mean, look, I
think that's what he said, as far as I remember. Is it not the case? OK, fine. The Conservatives, the Tories, Kemi, yourself, you can have your criticisms of Jenrick, but is it not the case, is it not the fact that you have lost, arguably, your biggest star? He was your star striker. He was although he wasn't the leader, he was probably now morphed into the most competent speaker, the best TV performer, and indeed doing lots of progress, lots of great stuff with social media, YouTube, that kind of thing.
There's no doubt that he made excellent videos for TikTok and Instagram and so on. His replacement, remember, I'm not actively in frontline politics anymore, but his replacement, Nick Timothy, has been speaking out really seriously on a whole range of issues, not least the terrible events in the Midlands with the police officer, another sign of where Britain goes wrong, where this bloke should have been fired and is now retiring on his full pension. I think Nick Timothy will be very good. I think he's a strong player. He's a new player. He's not known to the public, and I think that's going to be really, really helpful. Where I'm more interested in this, Ben, is how the Tory party goes about learning the lessons of the failures we had in office, and Kemi gets the Tory party into a position that when the public are ready to hear not just sort of reform-esque criticisms of Starmer, but actually positive alternatives to what we do to change this shambles. Keir Starmer is delivering on the only promise he made the British public, which is, I'm not the Tories. And he's discovering it ain't enough to not be the Tories.
Well, he does it now with Farage and Reform. He says, well, look at Reform, look at Farage, look at the bogeyman.
And this is probably the worst government in my lifetime. And I think Kemi is approaching it now as how do we be the alternative rather than how do we deliver the soundbite.
OK, one more question for you on this whole sort of charade. Robert Jenrick said that he was in a cabinet meeting the day before the defection, or maybe a couple of days before, and very few people would agree that Britain is broken. Kemi Badenoch was on the front page of the Telegraph, I think today, saying Britain isn't broken. Is Sir Conor, Britain broken to you?
The character of the British people is not broken. Our system of doing politics, our system of doing government is profoundly broken, and that needs to change if we are to free up the potential of the British people again to be the dynamic, enterprising, creative, wealth-generating country that we have shown throughout our history that we can be.
OK, and there's some exclusive polling in the Telegraph tomorrow showing that if the cancelled local elections would have gone ahead in those particular areas, Reform would have wiped the floor with their rivals. What's your message to the electorate now who are going to the ballot box in May? I know it's a few months away. You've got a choice. If you're of the sort of right-leaning persuasion, you've got a choice of the Tories or Reform. What are you offering that Reform isn't, or vice versa?
Well, my consistent message for decades on this is that Conservative councils overall cost you less and serve you better, but local government is broken in many ways in the UK. I'm not sure the local elections are going to make a hoot of difference to who walks into Downing Street after the next elections. These will be, as they always are, local elections where people get something off their chest. At the next general election, they'll be voting for what they want the direction of their country to be. And I think the task that Kemi Badenoch and her team have now got is to use this time seriously to be a credible, prepared, researched and detailed alternative government of Britain.
OK, so Conor, thank you for coming into the Late Show Live studio. Nice to have guests in the physical manifestation instead of down the line. Appreciate your company.
Thank you.
GBnews.com/your say. Let us know what you think about that. We're going to be getting stuck into the developing situation in London in just a second with Iran. The protests really sort of flaring up at least, between anti-regime protesters and police. Violence, as I said, nationwide between protesters and immigration agents in the United States as well, as President Trump signals he could reach for extraordinary powers to restore order. But also tonight,
The so-called Islamic Republic is not the government of Iran.
the exiled Crown Prince of Iran implores President Trump to strike the country, and I ask him today at a press conference why the regime poses such a threat not just to Iran and the West but Great Britain too. Protesters are clashing, as I said, with police outside the Iranian embassy in London right now as we speak. We're going live to that story next on The Late Show Live. Don't go anywhere.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world, but look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m, only on GB News.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
He was the guy who advocated getting Donald Trump elected. I would pay no attention whatsoever to Elon Musk. He's an idiot.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live. I'll tell you why an almighty row's broken out between Ryanair boss Michael O'Leary and the world's richest man Elon Musk. Basically, they accuse each other of not knowing about aviation. Who's your money on? That's coming up in just a tick. But breaking tonight, the European Union's air regulator has told flights to stay out of Iran's airspace amid simmering tensions between the Islamic Republic and the US, adding that the presence and possible use of a wide range of weapons and air defence systems, combined with unpredictable state responses, creates a high risk to civil flights operating at all altitudes and flight levels. That is gobbledygook for saying stay out of airspace because weapons could be fired soon. And in further breaking news tonight, disturbing scenes are emerging from the Iranian embassy in London as protesters are seen clashing with police. And if you're listening on radio there, that was a large group of protesters scuffling with police outside the embassy. In a statement on social media, the Metropolitan Police have said during the ongoing protest at the Iranian embassy this evening, a protester illegally accessed private property and climbed across multiple balconies onto the roof of the embassy and removed a flag. He's since been arrested. A Section 35 order has been imposed as a result of ongoing disorder, including missiles being thrown at officers. Several officers have suffered injuries. And further tonight, GBNews understands that the Islamic Republic is using chemical weapons on its own people. That's as the exiled son of Iran's last king issued a stark call to the world today, right here in Washington, D.C., urging action to help protesters finally topple the Islamic regime. A little earlier today, I attended that conference hosted by Reza Pahlavi, where I put this question to him. Thank you. Ben Leo from GB News in London. We have lots of Iranian activity in the UK connected with the regime here in Iran, sorry. Why is it in Britain's interests and the West's for this regime to fall?
Right. Well, I'm glad you asked the question because, in fact, one of the topics that I raised in some discussions I had the last time I was in London with former prime ministers was exactly to explain to them the mapping of every instrument that the regime is using under Khamenei's direct supervision through so-called centers through which they antagonize British citizens and, of course, many of those sleeper cells that you indicated. It doesn't stop in England, by the way. They are in America as well. So we're trying to explain to various governments the whole methodology that the regime is using with assets they have on the ground in respective countries, not to mention money laundering that goes on in many countries, including in Great Britain. So there are many ways that they can push back against that and protect not only the citizenry of whether it's Great Britain or America, but in what way it connects to why we need to do that ultimately by putting an end to the regime. And one thing that is now becoming even more clear, and the fact that the regime could be threatening the world as a last gasp. We should not allow this regime to catch a second wind and be able to do further damage, which is why the strike is not just needed to help the Iranian people overcome this unfair disadvantage, but it's also one way to completely dismantle the regime's aspect of threatening and cut off the chain of income that it uses to fund all of these operations, including the sleeper cells, which is why I'm also calling for any means to cut off the lifeline to the regime, which is its revenue from whether it's oil exports or whatever other means of income that they have. We need to dry the well that funds terrorism once and for all against the Iranian people and the world.
Okay, joining me in Washington, D.C. now is the Senior Director at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, Behnam Talabou. Behnam, welcome along. Thanks for your company. So much to talk about with Iran today. Of course, the Crown Prince was here in D.C. The live active protests outside the embassy in London right now. Have you seen any of those pictures? Does it surprise you, the kind of, I guess, the brutality the police are inflicting on protesters? They'll have their defences, the police, but there are some pretty tasty scenes going on, people getting bloodied and battered, protesters.
Yeah, you know, and pleasure to be with you again. No doubt Iranians, especially in the diaspora, know how brutal this regime can be. This is quite literally why they fled. So the brutality that they see on their screens, that they hear on their phones, selectively, of course, when they can hear back from their friends and family in Iran, are animating them to come out when they don't risk the kind of bullets and live fire that their friends and families and compatriots do back in Iran. That's why there's protests not just outside the Iranian embassy in London, but really around the world. The community has really come together to push for Donald Trump to keep his word and help defend the Iranian people and also take out the world's foremost state sponsor of terrorism. This is not an act of charity. This is an act of strategy.
Yeah, and that was what I posed to the Crown Prince today. I said, look, in the longer question, which we haven't shown, it was we've had Iranian accused terrorists on their way to allegedly blow up the Israeli embassy. We've had, there's even a foreign minister, a former Iranian foreign minister, who backs the fatwa on Salman Rushdie, who praised Soleimani after his death, living in North London. So we talked about that with the Crown Prince, and he said, look, a win for the Iranian people here, the fall of the Islamic regime, isn't just a win for Iran, it's a win for Great Britain, it's a win for the West as well. He did call, though, for US intervention, military action. He said the regime will fall regardless, but it will happen a lot sooner if President Trump gets involved. What's your take on that? Will it happen?
And more lives could be saved. I think President Trump has everybody where he wants them, however. Whether you're a U.S. ally, a U.S. adversary, you have to look to President Trump. You know, 2025 is proof that the president can cultivate strategically uncertainty to force the adversary to hedge, potentially even to lull them into a false sense of security. President Trump's rhetoric is changing on Iran, is softening, but the posture is actually hardening. As you know, right now, there is the USS Abraham Lincoln, the carrier strike group, headed from the South China Sea, assumedly towards the Persian Gulf to bolster some of President Trump's red lines and deterrence. I think there was some rhetorical issues with what the president may have said about the Iranians having a stay of execution for 800, given the fact that they killed 2,035 via death penalty last year. But I think, you know, time will tell. If the Islamic Republic thinks it can bet against President Trump, that is not a wise bet to make.
Although we have whispers from the likes of Saudi, Qatar, I think maybe Oman as well, Egypt, that they do not want President Trump to get involved. They cite economic turmoil, destabilization of the region. Will he ignore them? He'll have to ignore them, won't he?
I mean, no doubt both he and those countries, which are major U.S. partners, fear a contagion effect of conflict. But we are already in a conflict zone. The Islamic Republic has been firing ballistic missiles at U.S. bases last year, at U.S. bases 6 years ago this month, as well as has fostered instability in many of those countries by creating or co-opting terror groups, and of course has bolstered the Houthis to fire at Saudi for many years, and directly fired from its own territory in 2019 drones and cruise missiles at Saudi Arabia. So if these countries think the status quo, keeping the Islamic power equals stability, I got a bridge to sell them with their name on it.
I guess the problem is, though, for President Trump, and I'm hearing that there are some cabinet members saying this to President Trump directly in his ear, saying, look, we need to start focusing on domestic US issues now. The midterms are coming up in a couple of months. We need to focus on our communications to the American people. Why is the cost of living going down? Why is your quality of life getting better? What does it mean for you, the American people, by us getting rid of Maduro with operations in Venezuela? Why does it benefit the American people to get involved in Iran? So I think that's the reluctance at the moment from the administration, or at least President Trump, to directly get involved. But if you think there is going to be action, Benham, when will it take place?
I mean, no doubt there couldn't be a more direct benefit to the American people if the world's foremost state sponsor of terrorism, which has a bounty on the head of the U.S. president as we speak, has fatwas against them as we speak, and for a decade and a half has worked with everything from Mexican drug cartels in the south to Canadian biker gangs in the north to try to wreak havoc on U.S. territory. So trust me, this issue touches American national security at the core, and that is a point the Trump administration needs to be making from the bully pulpit, from the campaign trail, as well as anybody who cares about U.S. national security, left or right.
Yeah, and by the way, let's just be frank as well. The same with Venezuela with the oil. There's going to be oil in Iran as well, so I guess your gas prices are going down. Can we talk about the IRGC? Because the Crown Prince today spoke about the fact that there are many European nations, Britain included, who haven't prescribed the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps as a terrorist organisation. Why do you think that is? What is the reluctance from Britain to do that?
Well, in Britain in particular, there is this political football between the Prime Minister's office, the Home Office, and the Foreign Office. And of course, whenever the other party is out of power, Labour or the Conservatives will push for the prescription. But it's all about when the rubber hits the road. I think given that this is a costly decision, given that it's a highly politicized decision, the fact that it could come now would put hugely wind beneath the wings of Iranian protesters, hugely wind beneath the wings of Iranian dissidents, and say that Great Britain is not afraid to call a terrorist full stop. And then, of course, we have all the data that MI5 has put out about the attempted and thwarted plots by the IRGC, sometimes themselves, sometimes through foreign nationals, sometimes through criminal cutouts on UK soil. This also is about UK national security first and foremost.
Benham, great stuff. Really appreciate your company. Thank you. Come back when you have a chance to discuss this further. And isn't it funny? You mentioned about the prescription of the IRGC. Keir Starmer, so quick to regard Palestine as a state when it was appropriate to virtue signal to the world, much to the behest of the likes of Secretary Rubio and so on, saying that you nearly scuppered that Gaza peace deal by coming out with Macron and recognising Palestine as a state. Why don't you do the same thing here? Why don't you do the same thing, get get some authenticity and some intent on the go, and prescribe the IRGC? That would do the world of good for the Iranian protesters, who are of course being slaughtered in their droves. Interesting how we can be so fast with one topic and so lacklustre and slow with another. Benham, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Right, let's take a look at some of the main news stories here in America. President Trump has reiterated his view that the US needs Greenland for national security purposes, threatening tariffs against other countries that oppose his plans.
We're going to see NATO has been dealing with us on Greenland. We need Greenland for national security very badly. If we don't have it, we have a big hole in national security.
The ICE agent who fatally shot Renee Good in Minneapolis has received more than $1 million in donations from fundraisers. Meanwhile, tensions continue to flare all across America as protests against immigration enforcement continues. Elsewhere, the Iranian state television has aired a threat against President Donald Trump's life, as Benham was just talking about, actually, referencing his near assassination in Butler, Pennsylvania, with the caption, "This time, the bullet won't miss." And within the past few moments, the White House has announced some of the members of the Gaza Executive Board of Peace. Among those appointed are former Prime Minister Sir Tony Blair, US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, the Secretary of State for the US Marco Rubio, and Senior Advisor to the President Jared Kushner. And Venezuela's opposition leader says she's confident Nicolas Maduro's criminal regime will be dismantled and free elections will finally be held.
I am profoundly confident that we will have an orderly transition, but then the result of a stable transition will be a proud Venezuela who is going to be the best ally the United States has ever had.
Right, God, it's been a bit of a whirlwind show so far. Plenty more to come, though, on The Late Show Live.
Back up!
Any party packed? Is he packed?
President Trump threatens to take back control of the streets using centuries-old powers. More on that in just a minute, including the latest from the ground in Minneapolis, but also tonight.
He was the guy who advocated to getting Donald Trump elected. I would pay no attention whatsoever to Elon Musk. He's an idiot.
I love this story. I'll tell you why a major row's broken out between Elon Musk and Ryanair boss Michael O'Leary. Some of me does like Michael O'Leary because I'm into horse racing. He's a massive horse racing owner. But this row with Elon Musk has got me giggling for the past, 5 or 6 hours. I'll tell you exactly what's gone down in just a tick. Don't go anywhere.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are. with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Cates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live with me, Ben Leo. Right, a major row's broken out between Elon Musk and Ryanair CEO Michael O'Leary. So this was after O'Leary confirmed he has no plans to introduce Starlink, which is Elon Musk's global internet, satellite internet, to any of his planes on the budget airline.
Pay no attention whatsoever to Elon Musk. He's an idiot. Very wealthy, but he's still an idiot.
And can I just ask you about Starlink, which is Musk's satellite-delivered global internet connectivity system, and you've confirmed, look, it's not coming on to Ryanair. You've concerns about the drag of the antenna and the cost related to that. Elon Musk has written on X that you, Michael O'Leary, are misinformed. What do you say to that?
What Elon Musk knows about flights and drag would be zero. We have to put an aerial antenna on top of the aircraft. It would cost us about $250 million a year. In other words, about an extra dollar for every passenger we fly. And the reality for us is we can't afford those costs. Passengers won't pay for internet usage. If it's free, they'll use it, but they won't pay €1 each to use the internet. So we're not putting it on board. And I frankly wouldn't pay any attention to anything that Elon Musk puts on that cesspit of his called X. He was the guy who advocated getting Donald Trump elected. I would pay no attention whatsoever to Elon Musk. He's an idiot. Very wealthy, but he's still an idiot.
Do you have an X account, Michael?
No. I would not waste. I don't have any social media accounts. Thankfully, I'm too old to get involved in the cesspit that is social media.
Oh, I love it. So basically, Michael O'Leary's problem is he's saying that if he puts an antenna for Starlink on his planes, it's not a massive one, it's fairly small, the drag, the aerodynamic drag will cost his firm $250 million a year, so he's not doing it. In response to that interview, Elon Musk hit back, calling O'Leary an idiot and urging for Ryanair to sack him. There's the tweet if you're watching on television now. Elon Musk, Ryanair CEO is an utter idiot, fire him. Well, joining me live in Washington now is my panel for this evening, the political strategist Matthew Hurt and the Washington correspondent for the Daily Telegraph, Connor Stringer. And Connor, you are flying the flag for Ireland tonight as well.
That's it.
Are you Team O'Leary or?
I am Team O'Leary.
You
are? Michael, I think first of all he's one of the straightest talking CEOs you ever met. Who and what other world of business have you ever, comes across as well as a communicator like Michael O'Leary?
I do love that. I do love his outspoken.
Brilliant. I think he's quite akin to Farage. The point he's making, and you must remember, is that Ryanair is a budget airline. The cost margins are super small. One, drag and anything else anything that's going to add more time and more money to prices, they can't afford, and that's how they operate.
See, look, I'm obviously not an aviation expert, but when I heard Michael O'Leary, and by the way, representing America in Musk Corner is Matthew Hurt. Hello, Matthew. Obviously, I know nothing about aviation, but when O'Leary said that the antenna would cause $250 million worth of drag a year, I thought, what a load of nonsense. But who's right here?
Look, I tend to agree with Michael O'Leary here in the sense that these costs are going to be millions of dollars, $250 million, and this is a budget airline. How else are Americans going to fly for $40 from London to Ireland to other parts of Western Europe? And as Mr. O'Leary has said, the customers, the travelers, will not pay even €1 for this. This is tantamount in the United States to Spirit Airlines flying for $75 or whatever and not having internet access. I tend to side with Mr. O'Leary here on the cost, and especially, as Connor said, with the margins.
Okay, but Ryanair, by the way, Connor, are never that cheap, really. It's like, yeah, you can fly from London to Dublin for €20. It's like, yeah, plus tenner to use the toilet, plus another 20 quid
and
to
your
breathe.
left arm for a bag. But that is exactly the point. They're not marketing themselves as an upmarket brand that is offering you Wi-Fi at fast speeds for a price. It's not what they do. And like he says, the people that go on those flights, not stereotype, you know them very well, they're not going to be forking out €1 or more money to pay for high-speed Wi-Fi.
Okay, Katzeb on gbnews.com/you'll say has said, Michael O'Leary calling Musk an idiot is like the proverbial pot calling the kettle. Peter, hello Peter, good evening, thanks for your company. You said O'Leary said he would stop flying from the UK if we voted for Brexit. He's also a liar. And Stuart Lang has said, should I read this or not? Stuart, what are you doing to me? You said Michael O'Leary is a bottom feeder. Elon Musk is the single greatest entrepreneur of the 21st century. He is a bit of of this sort of left persuasion, Michael O'Leary, isn't he? He obviously hates Elon Musk. He hates Trump from that interview we saw there.
Which is fine, but I don't think that impacts the way he runs his airline. I think you can have your political opinion, and understand that actually cost margins are very tight and you can't afford to put Wi-Fi on your bloody plane. Okay,
whilst you're here, can we get a quick comment, Matthew, on the Iran situation? There's protests breaking out outside the Iranian embassy in London. It looks pretty tasty. Some protesters getting bloodied and battered. Of course, we have the Crown Prince today in Washington, D.C. Will President Trump strike Iran next week?
It is looking like it's going in that direction. The American government can provide a range of support from internet access using Starlink to other resources. It looks like President Trump, with the strong endorsement by the Crown Prince in exile, to make some kind of strike in Iran. And that is, as somebody who is hesitant, and we've been in foreign wars for 20 years from the United States perspective, Americans are war weary, but I do think a targeted surgical strike could really boost the efforts of the folks on the ground in Iran.
So as an American, you'd support that?
I am generally supportive of surgical strikes.
Do you agree there is this now concern from the Trump team that they need to kind of focus on their comms message domestically about what is going well for Americans? The gas prices are down in more than 40 states in prices not seen since 2020. I think in 40 odd states gas prices are now below $4. You've got the GDP over 4% in the third quarter last year. Lots of great wins to shout about, which maybe are getting drowned out by this sort of foreign interventionism.
As we head into the midterm elections over the next 9 months, most Americans will vote based on can they make the mortgage, can they save for retirement, and what do groceries and gasoline cost. And that is an important strategy, an important messaging strategy the Trump team and the campaigns on the ground have to make. And I think they could do both. I think you can chew gum and walk at the same time. They just have to make a really strong case on those domestic issues.
Connor, these are pictures now, if you're watching on television, from the Iranian embassy in London around about an hour ago. Protesters getting battered by cops, batons to the back of the knees there. There was some really quite concerning footage of an elderly guy who was sort of bloodied and bleeding on the ground from his head. We don't really see this with sort of pro-Palestine protesters or anyone else, do we?
No, not the scenes we're used to, absolutely. I mean, I would like to see what's instigated that and why it's kind of turned into this, but I think this is a kind of, as you say, a symbol of and a reflection of how tensions are rising with anything related to Iran at the moment, and I think we're reaching boiling point. You're seeing it spilling over now into the streets of London. Obviously, the streets of Tehran have been up in arms for the last couple of weeks, so I'm not surprised we're seeing this now, and I expect to see more of it.
What are you hearing on the ground here in DC with regards to military action? Who's for it? Who's against it in the cabinet?
I think military action is likely, but not in the imminent future, is what I'm hearing. I think there's an expectation that Donald Trump is weighing up the seriousness of making a strike and the risks that come with it. He wants it to be firm and effective. They're not going to do it just willy-nilly to say they've done it. And crucially, all their main kind of strike forces and capabilities are in the Caribbean Sea. So they've got to relocate, and it takes about 2 weeks to do that.
Yes, I think the first frigates will reach the Middle East on around January, is it 18th or 19th? So I think if you are going to get strikes at all, I think he'll strike Iran. I think he will. I think when he goes on the record today and he talks about, well, you know, they've stopped the execution, the public hanging of 800 people, and we welcome that, and, you know, he kind of puts the handbrake on a little bit when it comes to the rhetoric around striking Iran. I think he's not trolling, that's the wrong word, but I think he's kind of double bluffing, Matthew.
You know, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said earlier this week that they are already seeing money move out of Iran. The regime is moving money out of Iran, and I think that means regime leaders know that the United States is going to do something. My heart breaks for the people of Iran and the Persian diaspora around the world. That's exactly why we're seeing such passionate protests outside the embassy in London. I think it's why we're seeing protests across the country. And the Persian diaspora, the protesters who exist in the Washington, D.C. area, have for months been organizing and making the case for some kind of freedom in Iran. And I think this is a tipping point for the regime.
OK, chaps, great stuff. Thank you very much. Coming up next on The Late Show Live, it's a Labour wipeout, or at least it would have been if the delayed elections were allowed to go ahead. Some bombshell exclusive polling from The Telegraph tomorrow. I'll reveal all in just a second, but it basically shows that if the elections were to go ahead, that Starmer has cancelled, well, Reform would have swept to victory. Is this the cold, hard truth that Keir Starmer wanted to hide? Elsewhere, I'll bring you the latest on the developing situation outside the Iranian embassy in London, and all the front pages as well. Don't go anywhere on The Late Show Live.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/your say. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/your say, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back to The Late Show Live. Let's return to the breaking news in London. Disturbing scenes emerging from the Iranian embassy in the capital. Protesters are seen clashing with police, some bloodied and bruised. Some fierce scuffles, to be quite frank. In a statement on social media, the Metropolitan Police have said, in response to these scenes, during the ongoing protest at the Iranian embassy this evening, a protester illegally accessed private property and climbed across multiple balconies onto the roof of the embassy and removed a flag. He's since been arrested. A Section 35 order has been imposed as a result of the ongoing disorder, including missiles being thrown at officers. Several officers have suffered injuries. That's the Met Police statement there. My panel in Washington are back with me, the political strategist Matthew Hurt and the Washington correspondent for the Daily Telegraph and flying the flag for Ireland, Connor Stringer. Joining us from London is journalist and broadcaster Christo Foufas. Hello, Christo. Good to see you. What's tickled your fancy on the front pages, Christo?
Well, shall we talk about, obviously, the Labour wipeout that you were just referencing, which was the front page of the Telegraph. And I think that we should juxtapose this with what's happening within the right of politics as well. Because what's interesting is that we've got this story on the front page of the Telegraph pointing out that Labour majorities on 10 councils would be wiped out if these cancelled elections were to go ahead. So that's what the Telegraph polling has pointed out. Now, if we were to take that to a general election, we'd obviously have the situation where Labour would potentially be seeing massive losses. However, we also have the other headline on the front page of the Telegraph, which is an op-ed that's been written by Kemi Badenoch saying Britain is not broken and that she is essentially happy to see Robert Jenrick gone. Robert Jenrick, given his interview to GB News tonight, saying, actually, I want to unite the right. Well, it doesn't look like the right of politics. Whatever your views might be on Jenrick leaving the Tory party, there is a real danger of a fragmented right at the moment in British politics. And my fear is that are those people on the right in politics losing the bigger goal, which is, of course, to get Labour out in any way, shape or form, potentially the worst government we have ever had in history. And there's a real danger here that if Reform and Conservatives really split the vote, that we'll see exactly what happened in the 80s with the SDP and Labour of the 80s, the split that we saw there, meaning that Thatcher, arguably our best Prime Minister post-war of all time, she actually used that to her advantage and was able to be the most successful at the time Prime Minister electorally. So I think there is a danger here that Labour could end up getting re-elected, or certainly Labour and, heaven forbid, the Greens and the Lib Dems doing some sort of deal.
Yeah, I guess the two questions there, Christo, are does Reform, or will Reform need to do a deal with the Tories come election time? And there's still a long way to go. That remains to be seen. But also, one thing is for sure, in my mind anyway, is that the Greens, Labour and the Lib Dems will all align. They will certainly all align with each other. They'll do electoral pacts. They'll do anything to keep Nigel Farage out of Westminster. I mean, on the front page of the Mirror, if we can take a really quick peek at that, there's a warning from, is it John Healey, the Defence Secretary, saying, off the top of my head, that Farage as PM would be a national security threat. There we go. Farage can't be trusted with Britain. Defence Secretary warns of threat to national security. And that's, Connor, that's Labour's problem in my eyes, that instead of focusing on what they're doing well, and maybe there are a few things they're doing well, or focusing on their own message, all they seem to do, Connor, is say, yeah, but Nigel Farage, yeah, but the bogeyman, yeah, but what about going back to the dark days of Liz Truss? That's all they seem to do, is just point the finger, Connor.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a sign of the threat that Reform pose now and where Labour see they have the stiffest competition. I think Christos and yourself make a very good point, though. I think the issue here when Generic leaving, regardless of your opinion, is where the right is splitting. The biggest issue for reform in the next couple of years will be uniting it and making sure that they are in one coherent voice to take on Labour, as Christos said, to avoid any kind of deal elsewhere. I think it's actually extraordinary that you have the Defence Secretary arguably using his position of authority as a sitting cabinet member to actually throw mud at an opposition leader. Whether, I mean, I haven't read the piece, but I would like to see the kind of details of that. Allegations of links to Russia, I'd assume, is the basis for that. But I think it's quite extraordinary that a sitting cabinet minister can make such a claim.
That's all they seem to do. They just seem to, you know, Matthew, have you heard of Robert Generic? You heard what's going on?
I haven't, but what I do know is this is exactly the kinds of attacks that we saw on Donald Trump from the deep state ahead of the 2024 election. And just imagine in the United States if President Trump were to cancel an election for threat of the polling. Now, I often say a poll is a snapshot. Several polls tell a story, and the voters frequently get distracted by other things. They're trying to catch up with their lives. And so this move to cancel some of these elections is pretty serious.
The reason for cancelling the elections isn't because, I mean, on paper, obviously, isn't because they're scared of losing. It's because there's constituency boundary changes and so on, and they're saying that they just couldn't do the elections. But yeah, if you look at the exclusive polling from the Telegraph tomorrow, showing that in each of those cancelled areas where the elections would have been held, Reform would have won. So it's fairly obvious. Do you equate Nigel Farage with President Trump then?
I think that Nigel Farage is much of the same delivery as President Trump, and as someone who has interacted with Nigel Farage several times over the last 16 years when he's been in the States, he's definitely the kind of messenger that is very similar to President Trump.
Christo, you've got about 20 seconds.
Yeah, just to say you're absolutely right, Connor, there with this mirror piece. It was about the fact that Farage has said that he would vote against boots on the ground with British troops in Ukraine, and John Healey is saying, well, look, this is tantamount to treason, and that he supports Putin, which of course is not true. You could be against the plan because of our resources and because of the fears of British troops without actually saying that you're pro-Putin.
Yeah, thanks, Christo. I think you're sticking with us for the next hour, so go and grab yourself a coffee and we'll catch up fairly shortly. gbnews.com/you'll say. Jeff Burks. Hello, Jeff. Good morning to you. You've said Farage took us out of Europe and look at the mess he's left us in. And you want him to be the country's Prime Minister. Well, you called him a clown, actually. You want the clown to be PM. Half words, Jeff. I think a clown would be a better Prime Minister right now than Keir Starmer. More coming up in the next hour, including this.
Nobody convinced me. I convinced myself.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Morning, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. The weekend's starting fairly grey, a lot of cloud around, some mist and fog around as well, and there's also a few showers, but we should see some brighter spells coming and going. It's a bit of a messy picture, the breeze generally coming up from the south, bringing showers to the east of Northern Ireland, a zone of wetter weather crossing through eastern Scotland, maybe a bit of snow over the hills. Showers across England and Wales, pretty well scattered. Many places here will have a dry afternoon. It should brighten up a touch as well. May see a glimmer or two of blue sky and a bit of sun. May see temperatures top out in double figures, mostly high single digits and pretty close to the average for the time of year. Not feeling all that pleasant though, with a showery rain across northeast Scotland. Further south, as I say, some brighter skies and just one or two scattered showers, maybe over Wales and eastern England. We should see some sunny spells too. Pembrokeshire and feeding up to the east of Northern Ireland, we've got this zone of showers, so it could make for quite a wet day in Belfast. Further west across Northern Ireland, not too many showers. Much of western Scotland also dry into the evening, but still staying fairly grey and cloudy with outbreaks of rain across northeast Scotland. We'll continue to feed some wet weather in here through Saturday evening. Otherwise, many places will become dry. And then we look down to the south. There's another zone of showery rain. Just slowly spreads its way northwards across East Anglia and the south east. That'll keep the temperatures up here, where we've got clear skies across northern Scotland. We may well see some pockets of frost. Mist and fog also likely to thicken up tonight, so it could be quite murky first thing on Sunday morning. A zone of rain also expanding, so quite a damp morning for a good part of England and Wales. Still some showers across the east of Northern Ireland, but for much of Northern Ireland, Scotland, most of Sunday morning looks dry and bright. Some rain likely to creep into the far south of Scotland late in the day. Again, double digits across the southeast, but feeling cooler for most with the outbreaks of rain.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Box Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good morning to you. Live from Washington, D.C., this is GB News with the stories shaping Britain and America.
Well, what is happening is the biggest reorganisation of councils for 50 years.
Breaking tonight, Sir Keir Starmer's under mounting pressure to sack Health Secretary Wes Streeting, as new analysis suggests Labour would have been absolutely wiped out if the delayed elections had gone ahead.
Why is it in Britain's interests and the West's for this regime to fall?
As protests against the Islamic regime in Iran intensify tonight and the death toll climbs, I ask Iran's exiled Crown Prince about why the regime must fall, not just for Iran, not just for the West, but for Great Britain too.
The so-called Islamic Republic is not the government of Iran.
The Crown Prince is now also imploring President Trump to follow through with military strikes on his country. We'll also be bringing you the latest on that developing situation in London as anti-government protesters clash with police outside the Iranian embassy. More protests, this time in America. They continue to rise. Tensions all across the country as protesters clash with immigration agents. Now it's emerged that bleeding heart liberal soccer mums, who would have thought, could be behind the clashes.
We're going to see NATO has been dealing with us on Greenland. We need Greenland for national security very badly. If we don't have it, we have a big hole in national security.
And breaking today, President Donald Trump threatens tariffs on any nation refusing to back his ambitions to annex Greenland. I'm Ben Leo, and this is The Late Show Live. Joining me this evening in Washington, D.C. is my panel, political strategist Matthew Hurt and the Washington correspondent for the Daily Telegraph, Connor Stringer, and in London, journalist and broadcaster Christo Foufas. Hello, Christo. Give us a wave. There he is. Good man.
Hello.
Right, let's crack on. There he is. Let's crack on with the main story for this hour. President Donald Trump is considering placing tariffs on countries that don't support his plans to annex Greenland. That could mean Britain, us back in Blighty, could be whacked with a fresh wave of tariffs, with Sir Keir Starmer previously speaking out against the president's plans.
The future of Greenland is for Greenland and the Kingdom of Denmark, and for Greenland and the future of Denmark only.
Well, this is what President Trump told reporters at the White House a short time ago.
We're going to see NATO has been dealing with us on Greenland. We need Greenland for national security very badly. If we don't have it, we have a big hole in national security.
Those comments follow the Deputy Assistant to the President, Sebastian Gorka, exclusively telling this show with Bev on Wednesday that talks between, actually it was last night, that Wednesday's talks between the US and Denmark and Greenland in the White House went very well.
Look, the meeting went very well. I talked to one of my colleagues who was in that meeting. It went very, very well. I tell all of you, your viewers, everyone out there who wants to understand, I'm old school, okay? Get a map, or better, get a globe. I've got one of those old, schoolhouse globes in my skiff in my office in the White House. Look at where this country is. Look at its position. Whose hemisphere is it in? The fact that Greenland is closer to this city, Washington, D.C., than it is to Copenhagen, closer to Denmark. And if you look at the marine traffic routes, the threat from China, from Russia, from others, it's the opposite of what the lying fake news media will tell you. Our Greenland policy will make NATO stronger and safer.
With me now is Jørgen Børresen, who hosted Charlie Kirk, the late Charlie Kirk, and Donald Trump Jr. in Greenland last year. Jørgen, great to see you. Thanks for your company. First of all, in what capacity were you hosting Charlie Kirk and Don Jr.? They, of course, were sent over to scout out Greenland, but what happened to that event, and in what capacity were they there?
It was very great for the Greenlandic when they came to Nuuk on 7th January last year. So we have a good attention, and it was very good for the Greenlandic because we have on the suppressed people from Denmark in many years. So that attention we have from Trump, it is very good for the Greenlandic people. So now the people in the world is aware of Greenland and the Greenlandic people, and still we are not recognized as a people. We are forced to be Danish citizen. We was annexed in the 1953 with a referendum from Denmark. So we want to be recognized people. I think Trump will help us with that situation.
Jørgen, all the polls I've seen from Greenland and Denmark suggest, and correct me if I'm wrong, I mean the polls can be wrong, we know they're wrong many a time, but they suggest that Greenland residents, of which there are some 55,000, they don't want to be part of the United States.
In that pool, it was only two choices. It was Denmark and US, where the Danish make the polls and ask them which one do you want to join. It was no three option, and if it had been the three option would be have been independent. So people would have choose that, and many want to work with Americans very closely.
What could Greenland look like under American, I was going to say occupation, but American ownership? What would you envision for the future of your country?
You know, everybody wants to be independent, but I think Trump's patience has stopped. He has reached out for the government since last year, since the last election, and our government has closed the door, and I just listened to Christiansborg in Denmark and to the government, where they have just have been very hostile to Trump. So I think our government is in a bad standing because Mr. Trump has no interest to talk with Denmark. He's only want to talk with the Greenlandic government, and we are not allowed to speak with American without Denmark. This is because we are on the Danish constitution from 1953, and it makes us just like a teenager in the parents' home.
Jørgen, you are a Greenland native. Would you support military action in Greenland? Would you like to see F-16s, F-15s rolling above the Greenland skies, and submarines and frigates and Navy SEALs dropping down into Greenland? Is that what you want?
If that comes to that point, I understand Trump, but it will not be an attack to the Greenlandic people. Will be if the Russia and Chinese has come, and we have a government many times who has invited the Chinese to invest in Greenland, and this is very against the Monroe Doctrine, and Trump has mentioned that. So last year, our defense minister, foreign minister, was in China, invited Chinese to want to invest, and of course in that situation, just like in Panama Canal and also Venezuela, it is a threat to U.S. if the Chinese will assemble in Greenland.
Okay, Jørgen, thanks very much for your time. I hope you get what you want, if that is what you want. Many Greenlanders, according to the polls, don't want that. They want America to stay away. But if you do end up going under American ownership, I hope that you are compensated nicely for it. There were talks of $100,000 for each and every Greenland resident, which would equate the US bill of about, $5.5 billion just to purchase Greenland. Sounds like a bargain to me. Matthew Hertz here, Connor Stringer as well. Connor, there was also whispers that any purchase of Greenland would exceed the GDP of Denmark, and there was a figure during the rounds this week, I'm not sure if you heard, about $700 billion would be the price for Greenland.
Well, my question is, Ben, I appreciate the concerns as to why Donald Trump wants it and the national security, but would the American people be comfortable with footing a $700 billion bill? And who actually pays for that island? I don't think they would.
Is it not a sort of drop in the ocean in the grand scheme of things?
I'm a little more cautious on Greenland than the Trump administration. I think what we saw in Venezuela, there was an interest in eliminating a Russian, Chinese, and Iranian influence for a dictator who had disregarded the last election and was illegally ruling the people of Venezuela. The people of Venezuela very clearly want to be free. In Greenland, as we just heard, the poll didn't include, do Greenlandic people want to be free? There are three options there. I don't think there is an appetite for most Americans, particularly given that Greenland has agreed and Denmark has agreed that whatever the United States wants to do in the way of securing the Western Hemisphere through Greenland is possible. So why disrupt our allies in Europe and the Danish people and disrupt what's happening in Greenland by upsetting this apple cart? I'm a little cautious.
Well, I'm not saying the national security argument isn't a case, because it is, but maybe much like with Venezuela, there's more than one reason. Okay, yeah, Maduro's a commie despot. Yes, you can stop the drugs, but also there's some nice oil over there which you get your hands on. Rare earth minerals in Greenland, that could also be in play. That's why he maybe doesn't want to just go the nat security route with NATO.
And to a certain extent, you could have that bluff and bluster from President Trump in the negotiating process, and maybe we bring rare earth minerals into the conversation and create a trading opportunity there. I think many times President Trump will go further in the language and the dialogue than he intends to go, and then come back to the negotiating table.
Talking about going further in dialogue, Connor, so he's threatened today to punish nations with tariffs if they don't support him.
His favourite weapon to bring anybody to the negotiating table is typical stick and then carrot approach from Donald Trump. Exactly. Use the strongest messaging and rhetoric and all the tools in his arsenal to bring whoever he wants to the negotiating table. By then he's got the deal he wants ready, forces it down their throat, and then he walks away with a great deal. It's working, and it's a negotiating tactic that works. The issue with the tariff approach is that he is waiting on a very important Supreme Court decision which will rule if his use of the tariffs are indeed legal. If it goes the wrong way, the US faces paying back millions, and if you listen to Donald Trump, trillions of dollars in what they've made already in those. That no longer becomes a threat. Then what do they use?
Interesting. Yes or no, will they take Greenland with military force if they don't get what they want with dialogue? No.
I don't believe so.
No, yeah, I don't think so either. I think they'll get Greenland, though. I think a deal will be struck. I reckon $700–800 billion.
You think so?
I think so.
I'm just not so convinced. I just think that there's so many factors. I agree, the national security is an issue, but I think Europe are trying to prove they can step up and take it seriously. America already has the framework to get the most out of Greenland they want. I think there can be more to get out of it. They could be able to rewrite something that maybe looks like they've got it. But I think by ownership, I don't think it'll happen.
Okay, interesting. I think maybe, as Matthew said, I think NATO, the EU will do some sort of security deal saying, look, we're going to improve our security against Russia and China. We'll be there. We'll make a change. And maybe they'll give President Trump first dibs on any sort of mineral deals and so on. Maybe that's how they'll work it out. We'll see, won't we? Maybe that strike group, that carrier strike group from the South China Sea, allegedly heading towards the Middle East, maybe it's heading to the Arctic. Who knows? Right, coming up next on The Late Show Live, tensions continue to rise across America as protesters clash with immigration agents, ICE on the move again. And now it's emerged that bleeding heart liberal so-called soccer mums, I don't think it is soccer mums, by the way, I think I've got my explanation, but I'll tell you in a minute what it is. Soccer mums apparently could be behind the clashes. This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News. Oh yes, no breaks, remember? Lucky you. Right, President Trump's threatened to invoke centuries-old Insurrection Act to restore order to America's streets. That follows unrest over immigration enforcement operations, i.e. ICE, the guys with the guns, the masks, going rounds to American cities and rounding up the illegal migrants. Tonight, it's been revealed that it could be liberal soccer mums behind some of the recent unrest. When immigration and customs enforcement officials are deployed to US cities, they're on alert for 3 short blasts of a whistle, a signal that they're about to be swarmed by a group of soccer mums who tail officials in their cars, blast their horns and alert other agents to being in the area. And if you ask me, actually, but just on that point, if you ask me, that is asking for trouble. It's being reported on that point as well that Renee Good, the mother of the 3 who was shot by an agent in Minneapolis, participated in this very thing. As I said, tragic what happened to Renee Good, but you're putting yourself in that position, you're asking for trouble, Connor Stringer.
Absolutely tragic. I think the bigger picture in this is whether the right to protest and disrupt these operations, warrants the right for force, and that's kind of what we're seeing playing out here. I mean, look at the pictures on your screen now, fireworks on the streets, tear gas, etc. I mean, it's not far from a peaceful protest, so it's no surprise that you're getting the appropriate use of force in response to this. There is a bigger question about who is organising this and as to why they're being able to organise so well and who is financing it. I think the administration are doing quite a good job on trying to get behind who is responsible for getting these, air quotes, let's say, soccer mums together and how they do it, because it is so coordinated, and there are loads of examples of ICE agents being followed and trailed and kind of targeted in that manner.
Matthew, I don't think it's soccer mums per se. I think that's an easy, lazy description. It is, for the most part, if you look at the videos, it's white, liberal, middle-aged women who are doing this.
You're absolutely right. And about a week ago, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz basically implored leftist activists in Minnesota to go after and confront ICE and federal authorities. He has begged his law enforcement not to assist authorities. What many of your viewers may not know, Ben, is that Minnesota is the cradle of left-wing activism in the United States. For a long time, there was a training organization called the Wellstone Academy, which trained left-wing activists. Many of these left-wing protests protests in the United States there are 2 and 3 layers of people who are trained to do different things. There are trained medics and healthcare professionals, there are trained attorneys, and there are people who are willing to be arrested on the ground. We don't see that among conservatives. Somebody who's been involved in conservative activism and particularly protest movements for the last 20 years, we don't have that kind of an infrastructure on the right. What we do see is the left is highly organized. They have organizations like the Wellstone Academy and others based in Minnesota that teach soccer moms or middle-aged white women or champagne socialists and Mercedes Marxists to go out and do this kind of thing, knowing they'll be bailed out if they get arrested, knowing that they'll receive medical attention if they get injured.
Jamie, yeah, well said. On that point, Matthew, Jamie has said on your say, liberal soccer mums equals mini Marxists, underqualified and overeducated Islamo-simps. Yeah, I think that sums it up. With me down the line now is US Senate candidate John Deaton. John, great to see you. I think you're a Republican candidate, correct me if I'm wrong. What's your take on what's happening in Minneapolis and indeed on the wider argument with ICE? Are these soccer mums, these white liberal mums, are they putting themselves in danger, or is it just their right to protest? They're allowed to be there.
No, I don't think it's just them putting themselves in danger. I think it's these far-left politicians like Tim Walz who are encouraging them to commit a felony. Listen, I am the presumptive nominee, Republican nominee for U.S. Senate in Massachusetts. And let me tell you, I'm a former federal prosecutor. And what Tim Walz and them should be saying is that if you impede, if you interfere with ICE, you're committing a felony, and ICE agents can remove you, arrest you, detain you, and prosecute you for interfering with them carrying out their lawful duties. And shame on these politicians for encouraging it. I think they want cases like Renee Good, as tragic as it is, to happen so that they can politicize it.
I mean, of course, they deny that. John, there is one argument which I've heard in recent days, in that last year, 2025, had the highest number of deaths in detention, in ICE detention. I think it's 32 for the year, which was maybe up on about 18 the year before, maybe 12 the year before that. Although it was a similar number to the kind of numbers we saw under George Bush in, I think it was 2004, 2005. What's your response to those kind of deaths in ICE custody?
Well, listen, obviously, this is the problem, is you would believe that it would be an easy thing for politicians in America to get together and say, we will help you get the bad guys. There were 400 arrests in Minnesota, and some of them one gentleman had 17 convictions for sexual assault, and he wouldn't be turned over by the Minnesota police and these politicians to ICE. And I think if they would work with the federal government to help get the bad ones out, we would have less incidents such as that. But listen, any death in custody, there's internal processes to investigate it. They'll be investigated, and if conditions can be better than they should be. But what we have a problem here is we have actual interference with the ICE agents carrying out their lawful duties.
Yeah, and if you look on screen now, if you're watching on television, this is the latest from Minnesota. There's a sign there. Oh, look, there's a Palestine flag. Of course there is. Why is it that any protest around the world, whether it's an energy protest, it's about climate change, it's about, I don't know, trans, it's an anti-Trump one maybe in Edinburgh that I went to, any protest, they've always got a Palestine flag. What has Palestine got to do with ICE? Matthew, any ideas? What's Palestine got to do with immigration?
From the river to the sea, let illegal aliens run free. I think it's the mixed messaging of the disorganized, organized left in this country. Many of them come to these protests with 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 different political issues they care about, and that is the one thing that they struggle with in these small d democratic leftist movements is a coherent messaging, which makes it easy to call out things like this that we see on the screen.
There's another sign there saying no human is illegal. I mean, okay, I'll just turn up to your house tonight then, mate. Should I, and just let myself in? Yeah, come and make myself a cup of tea, get some biscuits from your kitchen. No human is illegal. John, why do people carry Palestine flags to each and every protest, regardless of what it is? What is that?
I believe that is paid organizers, quite frankly. My question to them is, where are they, as we saw Iranian people being slaughtered in the streets as they were protesting for actual freedom? Where's their outrage there? And so this is paid organizers being sent to all of these different protests, in my opinion.
President Trump has threatened to invoke the Insurrection Act. What would that look like? What would it mean constitutionally? Is that a good idea?
Well, it's allowed. Now, listen, under one act called Posse Comitatus Act, military is not allowed to engage in lawful, in normal domestic law enforcement. An exception to that is this Insurrection Act that was created in 1807, and that allows the president, if he determines that executing federal law is being impeded, he can use active duty military or mobilize the National Guard to protect those ICE agents. So if the president believes ICE agents' physical being is being challenged or threatened, he can invoke that Insurrection Act and use military to protect those federal assets, which include agents and federal buildings.
I mean, do you think he would get to that point? What would it mean politically for him? Is he opening a can of worms?
Well, I mean, in California, he's already invoked it. A federal judge there said that it violated the Posse Comitatus Act. So a lot depends on what's happening on the ground. If these ICE agents continue to be attacked and swarmed and pursued by these soccer moms or these protesters, then I believe he will, in fact, invoke it.
Okay, we'll wait and see. Thanks very much for your time, John. Really appreciate it. And hopefully we'll catch up fairly soon. That is Senate candidate John Deaton. Thank you, John. Right, let's get stuck into some your says before we give a quick roundup of the news. Actually, let's do the roundup first, and then we'll do the, sorry to the producers playing the music, stopping the music. Right, President Trump has reiterated his view that the US needs Greenland for national security purposes, threatening tariffs against countries that oppose his plans.
We're going to see NATO has been dealing with us on Greenland. We need Greenland for national security very badly. If we don't have it, we have a big hole in national security.
The ICE agent who fatally shot Renee Good in Minneapolis has received more than $1 million in donations from fundraisers. Meanwhile, tensions continue to flare across America, as we've just been discussing, against protests involving ICE as their operations continue. And Iranian state television has aired a threat against Donald Trump's life, referencing his near assassination in Butler, Pennsylvania, with the caption, "This time, the bullet won't miss." I'd love to know what the president thinks of that. Within the past few moments, the White House has announced some of the members of the Gaza Executive Board of Peace. Among those include the Peacemaster General, Sir Tony Blair, the US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, the US Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and the senior advisor to the president and husband of his daughter, Jared Kushner. And elsewhere, Venezuela's opposition leader says she's confident Nicolas Maduro's criminal regime will be dismantled and free elections will eventually be held.
I am profoundly confident that we will have an orderly transition, but then the result of a stable transition will be a proud Venezuela who is going to be the best ally the United States has ever had.
Right, let's do some your say, shall we? gbnews.com/your say. Vinny just said, Ben, you're poor producers. This is a really good show, really enjoying it. I'm sorry. I know, I cause them all sorts of nightmares and headaches. Apologies. Right, let's do some your says. We have, hi, Ben and Bev. This is from Jennifer Jane. Hello, Jennifer. A big well done to you both and the team for going global, landing in the USA. Thank you. I love watching your shows here. It's great to reach out to all our cousins across the pond. Studio panels are really exciting. I also enjoy it when Ben goes out and about talking to people on the street. Interesting and often funny. Thank you, Jennifer. Our cameraman, Ben Davidge, very talented bloke. He's here. He's arriving next week in the United States. So finally, I'll have something to do. I'll be out and about again. Colin has said, I'm feeling really disillusioned over Trump. I can't believe he's not attacking evil, the Iranian regime, to save these humans. I love Trump, but this is very concerning. Colin, I'm not privy to any information, but I am a betting man, and my bet is that next week you will see some fireworks, to say the least. Gary, hello Gary, you said, Ben, give us a shout out. I watch you all the time, great show. Hello Gary, shout out to you, thanks for your company. And RS has said, Ben, imagine if Greenland belonged to the UK, Starmer would pay Trump to take it. Yes, he would. Instead of 700 billion to the Danes, Starmer would give 700 billion sterling to Trump to take away Greenland. Right, still ahead on the Late Show Live.
Did Arab and Israeli officials convince you to not strike Iran?
Nobody convinced me. I convinced myself. You had yesterday scheduled over 800 hangings. They didn't hang anyone. They canceled the hangings. That had a big impact.
After Iran is said to have cancelled a large number of executions, public hangings no less, 800 or so, where does that leave the possibility of a US intervention? I've just told you my thoughts on that. I'll get the thoughts next of somebody a little bit more informed. Back in just a tick.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Morning, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. The weekend's starting fairly grey, a lot of cloud around, some mist and fog around as well, and there's also a few showers, but we should see some brighter spells coming and going. It's a bit of a messy picture, the breeze generally coming up from the south, bringing showers to the east of Northern Ireland, a zone of wetter weather crossing through eastern Scotland, maybe a bit of snow over the hills. Showers across England and Wales, pretty well scattered. Many places here will have a dry afternoon. It should brighten up a touch as well. May see a glimmer or two of blue sky and a bit of sun. May see temperatures top out in double figures, mostly high single digits and pretty close to the average for the time of year. Not feeling all that pleasant though, with a showery rain across northeast Scotland. Further south, as I say, some brighter skies and just one or two scattered showers, maybe over Wales and eastern England. We should see some sunny spells too. Pembrokeshire and feeding up to the east of Northern Ireland, we've got this zone of showers, so it could make for quite a wet day in Belfast. Further west across Northern Ireland, not too many showers. Much of western Scotland also dry into the evening, but still staying fairly grey and cloudy with outbreaks of rain across northeast Scotland. We'll continue to feed some wet weather in here through Saturday evening. Otherwise, many places will become dry. And then we look down to the south. There's another zone of showery rain. Just slowly spreads its way northwards across East Anglia and the southeast. That'll keep the temperatures up here, where we've got clear skies across northern Scotland. We may well see some pockets of frost. Mist and fog also likely to thicken up tonight, so it could be quite murky first thing on Sunday morning. A zone of rain also expanding, so quite a damp morning for a good part of England and Wales. Still some showers across the east of Northern Ireland, but for much of Northern Ireland and Scotland, most of Sunday morning looks dry and bright. Some rain likely to creep into the far south of Scotland late in the day. Again, double digits across the southeast, but feeling cooler for most with the outbreaks of rain.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Did Arab and Israeli officials convince you to not strike Iran?
Nobody convinced me. I convinced myself. You had yesterday scheduled over 800 hangings. They didn't hang anyone. They canceled the hangings. That had a big impact.
The exiled son of Iran's last king says he's confident the regime will fall. Not if, but when. It's just a matter of time. And he's implored President Trump to push ahead with military strikes. As I said, I think it's coming next week. But it comes, of course, amid an information blackout. The internet's gone out, and a brutal crackdown, of course, with latest estimates in Iran suggesting up to 2,600 people have already been killed. The true figure is feared to be far higher. The exiled prince today, Reza Pahlavi, was saying in Washington, D.C. at this press conference, he reckons it's about 12 or 13,000. And as you've just heard, it appears the US has taken a step back from pushing ahead with plans to strike Iran in the next couple of days anyway, at least in the imminent future, after nearly 800 executions were cancelled. So they were scheduled for Wednesday. Iran reportedly didn't go ahead with them, and they were meant to be moved to today, but as we understand, again, they've still not gone ahead. Breaking tonight as well, the European Union's air regulator has told flights to stay out of Iran's airspace amid simmering tensions between the Islamic Republic and the US, adding that the presence and possible use of a wide range of weapons and air defence systems, combined with unpredictable state responses, creates a high risk to civil flights operating at all altitudes and flight levels. And if you're looking on TV now, this is Flight Radar 24 live footage. So there are a few flights over Iran. I mean, nothing compared to the rest of the Middle East. I wouldn't want to be on those flights. Maybe it's Michael O'Leary taking a shortcut, saving a couple of bob. Instead of going round Iran, let's go as the crow flies. And in further breaking news tonight, disturbing scenes are emerging from the Iranian embassy in London as protesters are seen clashing with police. In a statement on social media, the Met has said that during ongoing protests, which are on your screens now, these are pictures from a little bit earlier tonight, they said one protester illegally accessed private property, climbed across balconies and onto the roof of the Iranian embassy and tried removing the flag. He's since been arrested, and a Section 35 order has been imposed as a result of the ongoing disorder, including missiles being thrown at coppers and several officers also suffering injuries. More on that as we get it. Those are scenes from earlier tonight outside the Iranian embassy. Joining me to discuss this in Washington is my panel, the political strategist Matthew Hurt and the Washington correspondent for The Telegraph and the flag flyer for Ireland, Conor Stringer. You are such a staunch supporter of Ireland, Conor. Before we get on to serious matters,
yes.
Conor refused to join my all-English football team here, my seven-a-side, because he's Irish, and the team name was the Full English. Isn't that right, Conor?
That's absolutely fake news. Fake news if you do say so. Actually, dear viewers, what I found out that Ben is not up to our standard, and that was the issue. He couldn't join our team, so we let him go off and set up his own. These things happen.
Fake news. I don't want your company anyway. Right, let's get on to more serious matters. The scenes outside the embassy in London, and of course military action with Iran. I think it's coming next week. First of all, your thoughts about what's happening outside the embassy in London?
I think it's proof that this is now reaching boiling point, isn't it? Not just across Iran, but across the rest of the world. Only a matter of time, surely, before Donald Trump decides to kind of use some form of intervention. People in the White House have been telling me this week, Ben, that they're kind of waiting to see if they can conduct a strike, a targeted strike, most likely on the Ayatollah or individuals responsible for the crackdown. If they can do it with precision, speed, and, well, execute it primarily, they're worried about any kind of American lives being put at risk or doing something embarrassing, risking collateral damage, and things aren't going to plan. But it's unsurprising we're seeing this now spill out of Tehran.
Yeah, so one protester, Matthew, was arrested. He was slammed to the ground. There was footage earlier with him. I think he was quite bloodied from the head. But he was basically accused of trying to scale the embassy, remove the Islamic Iranian flag and replace it with the, is it a lion and...
It's the lion and the sword and the sun.
Yeah.
And it is heartbreaking to see. However, as the panel on Patrick Christie's program said just a couple of hours ago, there is a defense of the spaces where these foreign governments exist in cities like London, Washington, D.C., the Vienna Convention, that compels law enforcement to protect the space. And this does go to show that millions of Iranians have fled Iran over the last 46, 47 years. They have taken up home and refuge in places like London and places like Washington, D.C., and they are very passionate about what is happening, and I'm not surprised. But as you said, about an hour ago, we talked about how the police in London are defending the Palestinian protesters and not engaging in sort of aggressive tactics there, and they are here, and it is unfortunate to see.
There's a guy on Your Say tonight, gbnews.com/Your Say, called Jeff Burks, who you've been quite frequent on Your Say, Jeff. I get the feeling you don't like us. You've said there's nothing happening in London, Ben. Fake news. Wait for the claim against GB News. I don't know what you're on about, Jeff. Christo Foufas is in London, and he can tell us what the latest is. Christo, is it fake news? Is there nothing happening in London? We've just made these pictures up. They're AI, are they?
Well, yeah, I mean, if they happen to be fake news, you've done an incredibly good, and I have to say, swift job. I mean, have you been taking lessons from West Midlands Police on AI intelligence? Because obviously it's quite clear from the pictures. And by the way, I should make it clear, if you haven't already, Ben, that we can't actually show everything that's been going on. There are some other pictures online of unfortunately, some injuries that people have sustained. One of the people who have been injured is an older guy. Some people on X saying that he is at least 70, and accusations that the Met Police have been incredibly heavy-handed with these protesters. And you alluded there to what's been happening, of course, over the past several months and indeed last couple of years with these Palestinian protests in London and the defence of the embassy, Vienna Convention that happens, where police tend to be a little more heavy-handed around embassies, which is what is perhaps what's happening here with the Iranian embassy. But a couple of points on that. These are people who are protesting extremist Islamic regimes, and so obviously it raises some questions about an embassy, whether it be an extremist Islamic regime, whether that is an appropriate thing to be protecting. But on a wider note about the Palestinian protests, of course we saw a lot of those Palestinian protests outside of the Israeli embassy in London. We saw Palestinian protests outside the American embassy in Nine Elms here in London, and I certainly don't remember the police being this heavy-handed around protecting those embassies when it came to those protesters. So I think the Met Police need to be very, very careful here. Obviously, it's still early days, but from the footage I've seen, it does look like they're being heavy-handed. Met Police aren't here to defend themselves. They're saying that they were simply trying to protect the embassy from someone who had got on there and was trying to raise the original Iranian flag. But very, very unpleasant scenes, and certainly not fake.
Yeah, someone else on your site called Peter Scarborough. Hello, Peter. Hope you're well. You said, Ben, there are 5 men and a dog. Stop it. You're making a mockery out of GB News. I'm not quite sure what I'm missing here, but anyway. Christo, what do you make of the something that was brought up a bit earlier tonight? Do you remember how quickly Sir Keir Starmer was to come out and recognise Palestine as a state because Israel didn't bow down to Starmer's demands, as if they, give 2 figs what he thinks? But he came out with Macron, recognised Palestine as a state. Marco Rubio here and the Americans came out later and said that Starmer and Macron and all the other virtue signallers who did that almost scuppered the peace talks between Hamas and Israel. Just being a liability, basically, the UK and France and so on. He was so quick to do that, wasn't he, Keir Starmer? And yet, when it comes to Iran and the scenes we've seen since sort of late December, not a peep, not a word about prescribing the IRGC as a terrorist group.
Well, absolutely, and it's because I think that there is a fear in this country, and we have to just get to grips with this fear of people presuming that if you were to criticise a radical Islamic regime, that you are criticising the whole of Islam. Well, actually, that's an insult to the whole of Islam. But also, as a leader, as a good leader, you should be able to absolutely condemn a radical Islamic regime that is threatening, or indeed may well have, hung people. Now, Donald Trump has said that there haven't been any hangings. I really, really hope that that is true. But this is a horrific regime. I have said before, we shouldn't get involved until the Iranian people themselves make it clear that that's their uprising. It's almost got to come from them before the West starts to get involved. But at some point, we're going to have to help some of these poor people, especially as it seems to come out of some sources from Iran tonight that it looks like the regime are using chemical weapons against these poor protesters. And I think as well, it really raises the questions about us actually having these sorts of scenes on our streets. These aren't our conflicts. I think a lot of people would say, well, why are we having to deal with this on the streets of London? And then why are we being so heavy-handed with people who are protesting a regime that hangs people, a regime that is extreme, and a regime that is literally the personification of extreme Islam, something that we should all be condemning?
Yeah, I was thinking, good point actually, Christo. I was thinking the other day off air about how Britain's turned into this sort of hub for international affairs and conflicts, and, Muslims fighting Hindus and the Pakistanis fighting Indians, and then you've got, Israel-Gaza protests, then you've got other these protests. It's kind of like, when did this happen to Britain? When did we become this sort of hot pot of international affairs? British people, for the most part, don't care. I mean, maybe Iran is an exception because Iranian terrorist sleeper cells are on our streets, but the other stuff I've mentioned, we don't care about this stuff. Why is all this on the streets of Britain? Why is our police forces, and again, I give exception to Iran, to this incident now, but the other nonsense, all the Palestine lot, I don't care. When did that happen to Britain? What's going on there?
There are so many problems in this country that we appear to have brought in ourselves. Of course, every single country, right, has its own problems.
as well.
Yeah, we all, absolutely, and my word, you know, you will be in prison, what is it, 30 people a day are arrested over social media posts, but, you know, if you say that you want to, I don't know, see the death of white people, well, you get citizenship. I mean, it's pretty unbelievable. But there are so many, everyone has homegrown problems. I grew up in a time when the IRA were the terror issue, really, in the United Kingdom. Now, that was a horrific time. That was a time where we had to get rid of bins because of fear of bombs. That was a time where you know, we were on high alert for terror. But the difference was, and I'm not trying to romanticize it at all, because it was absolutely horrific and people lost their lives, but it was our conflict. It was a conflict that was about the UK as a whole and our role within the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland. It was something that was from us, whereas these conflicts, what have they got to do with us?
Yeah, quite right. Christo, stick around. We'll be going through the papers one last time before we say goodnight. For the time being, let's get the take of Democratic analyst Ari Aramesh. Ari, nice to see you. Big question. When will President Trump strike Iran?
The sooner the better, and the heavier the hand, the mightier the strike, the better. I think, and again, I'm in the minority in my party, but I think the president's view is also a minority in his own party, the MAGA right and the progressive left, or isolationist by definition. We no longer have the Joe Lieberman, John McCain sort of center-left, center-right, reasonable policy, reasonable political, on both domestic and foreign policy for that matter. So when is President Trump going to strike? I think it's already too late, but no matter when he does it, it's still better than not doing it. Just a couple of days ago, you had millions of people on the streets of Iran, different cities, Tehran, Isfahan, Tabriz, Mashhad, Kerman, Shiraz, you name it. There were protests. These guys mowed down 20,000 peaceful protesters, and that's according to CBS News. That's a mainstream outlet. 20,000 unarmed civilians left. Let me give you an example here just for sake of comparison. During the first couple of months of the Syrian uprising in 2011, Bashar al-Assad, the butcher of Damascus, managed to kill about 800, 900 people. Now, imagine in 2 nights, these Islamists, the Islamic Republic of Iran, under Ayatollah Khamenei, with the blessing of the IRGC, that's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, mowed down 20,000 civilians. Now, I'm not asking or telling the president to do this because it's the right thing to do, or it's a moral thing to do, or it's going to help free a nation. It's in our national security interest. This is an adversary that's been in that region since 1979. Anti-American, anti-Israel by definition. You look around and see any issue, any problem, Central Asia, Middle East, Persian Gulf, and the Arabian Sea, the Islamic Republic of Iran's hands are somewhere there. Hamas, Islamic Jihad, Hezbollah, the Iraq Civil War, the Yemenis, the Houthis. Look at these groups they funded in Afghanistan. They're all over Somalia. They're all over Nigeria. They're even as far west as Mali. You can see the hands of the Islamic Republic of Iran. Now that we have the Delta boys have managed so beautifully to capture and bring back, to put him on trial, on fair trial, Maduro, you will see the hands of Iran being exposed now in Venezuela. Deep investments, lots of IRGC folks on the ground. This is not, we're not asking the president to hit these guys or go for regime change because it's the right thing to do. It is the thing to do that is going to benefit and serve our national security. And we don't do it now. We're going to do it down the road, much more expensive, much more extensive, and much more expansive war in that region.
Yeah, and also, by the way, I mean, of course, you'd be doing it for American priorities, first of all, but you'd also be doing the West a hell of a favour. In London, in the UK, we have terrorist sleeper cells. We have Iranians accused of wanting to blow up the Israeli embassy. 3 of them were arrested on their way, allegedly, to blow up the embassy. We've got lots of other... MI5, our domestic intelligence service, came out the other week and said that they foiled around 20 Iranian-linked terror plots in recent years. So you'd be doing us a favour as well, Ari. So Reza Pahlavi, who is the Crown Prince, the exiled Crown Prince, he was in Washington, D.C. today. He said he's ready to take over. He said he's got a transition plan in place. He's ready to go. And most importantly, he's got the backing of the Iranian people. Is that correct? Is that what the Iranian people want on the most part, Ari?
You know, it's a very good question. I think you've heard his name definitely being chanted loudly and clearly on the streets of Iran. Let me give you a little sort of first of all, when you mentioned stuff about London, I lived in Chiswick for a couple of years, Chiswick, Richmond area. So I'm pretty familiar with the streets of London. And way back when I did my master's at LSE, I lived in Holborn. So I'm quite familiar with, the streets of London. Sometimes just walking around Acton would give you a bit, sort of a little goosebump. So great people, great locations, great neighborhoods, but sometimes I wonder, why is it that I feel there are sleeper cells all over a town that used to be the heart of a great empire? And it's a source of some dismay, to be very, very frank with you. As for Reza Pahlavi, he's got a brand name in Iran, and the Iranians on the streets have, when they compare his father's regime to the current regime, I'm talking about, not apples and oranges, apples and big oranges. You're talking about a regime that was pro-U.S., Israel, pro-West, successful economically, probably the most dominant military force in the region. The upward trajectory, was positive. Iran was on the path to becoming one of the big guys and one of the big leagues. And look at what happened. They became a pariah after the Islamic Revolution. So even, I would say about 74% of the Iranian population has no memory of Reza Pahlavi's father's regime, the kingdom. But the memory stands, and people have good memories. And just to give you an example, at the time his father left Iran, $1 was worth 70 rials. Today, $1 is worth about 1,400,000 rials. That's quite an inflation, ain't it?
Yeah. Yep. Okay, Ari, great stuff. Fascinating speaking to you. I think President Trump's immediate problem is that you've got the likes of Egypt, Saudi, I think Qatar as well, Oman, all saying we don't want you to get involved. It will cause economic turmoil. It will destabilise the region. But if you're asking me as a Brit, I say to hell with that. I want the IRGC off our streets. And we could start actually with Keir Starmer prescribing them as a terrorist organisation. That would be a good start. As I keep saying tonight, he was quick enough to recognise Palestine as a state. Anyway, Ari, thank you so much, mate. Appreciate it. Democratic analyst Ari Aramesh. GBnews.com/your say. Get your comments in before the end of the show. Right, coming up, we'll bring you the latest on the headlines making the front page of tomorrow's newspapers, including, get this, another load of nonsense, why an American is claiming asylum in Britain. Connor Stringer, Matthew Hurt and Christo are all here. Christo Fufas down the line in London. Right, this story is absolutely nuts, and I think it's from your paper, Connor, Camilla Tominey's story. A US asylum seeker has been living in Britain with free accommodation and benefits, courtesy of you, the taxpayer, for more than a year in the first case of its kind. So this guy's American, okay? He's from Las Vegas. He fled to Britain claiming he was being persecuted because, get this, drum roll, he's black, tick, Jewish, tick, and a member of the Mormon Church. By the way, how can you be Jewish and a Mormon? He was put up in migrant hotels before his claim was rejected last summer. However, he's not been removed from the UK, and he's subsequently been allowed to claim thousands of pounds in accommodation, food and state support. Absolutely crazy. In response to this, a Home Office spokesman has said, "We're working to remove this person as soon as possible. Under this government, returns of people with no right to remain in the UK have surged, with almost 50,000 people removed, a 23% increase on the previous period." Connor, this is nuts. Great story, by the way, from the paper.
It's a great story, isn't it? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Well done, Camilla and Patrick's story on that one. Just extraordinary. But this is exactly the issue, the voting issue, that people are getting frustrated about. That, and similar to what you're seeing in this country, is that asylum seekers who have come over here illegally are being lost in the system, being allowed to roam the streets of London with no consequences.
Matthew, why are you sending your asylum seekers to Britain?
Ben,
what are you playing at?
I thought this story was going to be about Rosie O'Donnell shacking up at Connor's house, and you know, it is absolutely insane. But this is what happens when a state, when a government creates an infrastructure for people to come and take the services of taxpayers. We've seen it here in the United States. You see it in Great Britain. It is absolutely abhorrent and awful that these kinds of individuals abuse a system and go and leech off the taxpayers. And we're happy to take them back and figure it out in Las Vegas.
I mean, yeah, you could have sent someone a bit more, I don't know, productive. I don't know. Who else? I mean, Ellen DeGeneres did move over, didn't she? But she packed up, saying she couldn't handle the Cotswolds winter. Right, Christo, are you there? This guy, Christo, he's black, Jewish, and a Mormon. I'm surprised he's not gay and disabled as well.
Well, he actually does claim, I think, some aspects of homosexuality in the story, but I'm not entirely sure about it. But it was, I'm sorry to laugh, I don't mean to laugh, I'm sorry. He gave an interview with The Telegraph where he said, the taxpayers are paying for me to be here. I want to say thank you. I'm grateful for that. Yes, I won't be saying you're welcome to him. He was then given £1,500 and a flight home to Las Vegas before Christmas, but decided instead to start rough sleeping at a McDonald's in North London and at the Barbican Centre after being deemed unfit to fly. It's not clear whether he had to give back the £1,500. It's absolutely crazy. I was going to use a different word there, but it is barking mad. I don't understand how you can live in the United States. And just the only thing about this story that I will say is positive is, does that mean I can come and claim asylum in the United States because we have such an absolutely mental government here? If so, I'm fully in support of this guy.
Well, there was talk some months ago, Connor, wasn't there, about Brits being given asylum in the USA who had been victim of free speech. I mean, Lucy Connolly, for example, Graham Linehan, he's not a Brit, he's Irish, but people being given asylum for free speech issues, civil liberties issues.
Absolutely, and it's still something they're considering at the moment. I think the issue behind the scenes, I'm told, is that they're trying to find the right case. This would obviously be unprecedented, so they're trying to make sure the right individual to send the right message to Keir Starmer and his allies that they're taking this very seriously, so it's still very much in the works.
Matthew, would you welcome Brits fleeing persecution from our dear leader, Sir Keir Starmer?
I have talked about this on this station, and I welcome Graham Linehan and the remaining members of Monty Python Flying Circus, and it is fantastic. Free speech defenders, and then again, more tariffs on Keir Starmer's government if he bans X and continues to crack down on free speech.
I think Graham Linehan and Andrew Doyle and all that lot, I think they're in the Midwest somewhere. They're in Arizona now, enjoying life.
They are. Not quite the Midwest, but we don't have to do a geography.
Is that not the Midwest?
No, that's the Southwest.
Could not be further.
Sorry,
Listen,
I've been to Arizona as well.
It's a big place.
Yeah. All right, there goes my geography. At least I didn't say it was on the East Coast. Right, Christo, one more story from you. What about Labour is told, the front of the Daily Mail, Labour told to protect all women after female nurses win a landmark tribunal over the trans colleague. This is the Darlington nurses, Christo. Have you seen this?
Yeah,
so
this is an interesting...
nurses from Darlington who... Yeah, go on.
The story, it was a tribunal decision. It was an employment tribunal, from what I understand. And you're quite right, the front page, Labour is told, now protect all women. And this was the case of the tribunal decision that ruled the NHS bosses, this was in Darlington, violated the dignity of the 8 female nurses because they won a challenge against a transgender woman. This is a man this is someone who identifies as a transgender woman but is male biologically, has male genitalia, has a girlfriend, so therefore I guess would identify as a lesbian. I'm just trying to get my head around that. Using their changing room. So that was the ruling, and the Mail reporting today it's piling pressure on Equalities Minister Bridget Phillipson to speed up this introduction of guidance on single-sex spaces in the NHS. Well, firstly, I do not think Bridget Phillipson needs any pressure piled upon her because I don't think she's competent at the best of times, but I was hearing earlier that apparently it's a 300-page guidance document.
Yeah, crazy. I'd like to say on this side of the pond we don't have as much of that nonsense anymore. Christo, thanks for your company tonight. Appreciate you. Have a good weekend. Matthew, thank you very much. And Connor, thank you very much. Quick shout out to Lynn Maguire, who said hello, and you'll say hello, Lynn. Hope you're well. Thanks for your company. Thank you, viewers, for tonight. Appreciate you. I'll see you tomorrow from midnight in the UK. Until then, sweet dreams, good night, and I'll catch you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Morning, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. The weekend's starting fairly grey, a lot of cloud around, some mist and fog around as well, and there's also a few showers, but we should see some brighter spells coming and going. It's a bit of a messy picture, the breeze generally coming up from the south, bringing showers to the east of Northern Ireland, a zone of wetter weather crossing through eastern Scotland, maybe a bit of snow over the hills. Showers across England and Wales, pretty well scattered. Many places here will have a dry afternoon. It should brighten up a touch as well. May see a glimmer or two of blue sky and a bit of sun. May see temperatures top out in double figures, mostly high single digits and pretty close to the average for the time of year. Not feeling all that pleasant though, with this showery rain across northeast Scotland. Further south, as I say, some brighter skies and just one or two scattered showers, maybe over Wales and eastern England. We should see some sunny spells too. Pembrokeshire and feeding up to the east of Northern Ireland, we've got this zone of showers, so it could make for quite a wet day in Belfast. Further west across Northern Ireland, not too many showers. Much of western Scotland also dry into the evening, but still staying fairly grey and cloudy with outbreaks of rain across northeast Scotland. We'll continue to feed some wet weather in here through Saturday evening. Otherwise, many places will become dry. And then we look down to the south as another zone of showery rain just slowly spreads its way northwards across East Anglia and the southeast. That'll keep the temperatures up here where we've got clear skies across northern Scotland. We may well see some pockets of frost. Mist and fog also likely to thicken up tonight, so it could be quite murky first thing on Sunday morning. A zone of rain also expanding, so quite a damp morning for a good part of England and Wales. Still some showers across the east of Northern Ireland, but for much of Northern Ireland and Scotland, most of Sunday morning looks dry and bright. Some rain likely to creep into the far south of Scotland late in the day. Again, double digits across the southeast, but feeling cooler for most with the outbreaks of rain.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pearce.
And me, Miriam Cates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to Lee Anderson's Real World. Tonight on the show we've got broadcaster Mike Parry. He's going head-to-head with our left in the corner, Fahima Mohammed. We've got business travel expert Clive Ratton and YouTube influencer Based and Bougie. But first, let's go to the news.
Good evening. The top stories. West Midlands Police Chief Constable Craig Guildford has announced his retirement after pressure over a decision to ban Maccabi Tel Aviv fans from a match with Aston Villa last year. Downing Street said yesterday it no longer had confidence in Mr Guildford after a report into the decision to ban the fans. The Home Secretary has said by stepping down, Craig Guildford has done the right thing today. The IOPC says it will continue to look into the actions of West Midlands Police and the decision to ban the Maccabi Tel Aviv fans from Birmingham following Craig Guildford's retirement as Chief Constable. Robert Jenrick says his defection is part of uniting the right. The former Shadow Justice Secretary told GB News he discussed his defection with his family at Christmas. He yesterday announced his joining Reform hours after he was sacked by the Tory leader Kemi Badenoch over what she called clear, irrefutable evidence that he was conspiring to jump ship. Speaking at a press conference alongside Nigel Farage, Mr Jenrick called his former party rotten, dishonest and no longer fit for purpose. Nick Timothy, the new Shadow Justice Secretary, said he did not recognise the Tory party that Mr Jenrick had described. Meanwhile, Kemi Badenoch has said she cannot do a deal with liars when asked about a possible pact with Reform UK in the wake of Jenrick's defection. And an NHS trust indirectly discriminated against nurses by allowing a trans woman to use a female changing room, a tribunal ruled today. A group of nurses won a partial victory against County Durham and Darlington NHS Trust. The NHS Trust was found to have violated the dignity of the nurses and harassed them by requiring them to share a changing room with a biological male trans woman and not taking seriously their concerns. However, it dismissed several other claims, finding that Rose Henderson, who's a biological male, had not harassed or victimised the claimants. Those are the latest GB News headlines. For now, more news from me in an hour.
Tune into GB News Radio wherever you are. Online, on DAB Digital Radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player, on Nation Player and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Welcome to Lee Anderson's Real World. I'm Lee Anderson, Reform UK Member of Parliament for Ashfield. And our left in the corner tonight is political commentator Fahima Mohammed. I think it's the second or third time on the show, Fahima. And he's back, Mike Porky Parry.
Yeah.
PMQs this week again in Parliament. Sir Keir Starmer up ranting at the dispatch box.
Yeah.
He mentioned Reform UK countless times. Have a look at this clip, guys.
Reform, 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 reform in the member of Clacton. Reform, 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 reform. reform, 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 reform.
So, Fahima, you saw him there again in action, Sir Keir Starmer. I think that Reform UK are living rent-free in his head. What do you think?
I think Reform's living rent-free in the media frenzy. And I think that actually, at the end of the day, it is quite normal to politically challenge and criticise other parties. It's no different. And you guys are actually a challenge for Starmer at the moment.
But we're
and
not in power, Fahima.
It doesn't matter. But, you know, I think, like I said, it's the media frenzy right now that is actually happening. That's why there's so many U-turns that has never happened before, because politics has never been like
So why do you think there are so many U-turns, Fahima?
Because I think actually you can flip it and think that they actually are listening to the public. When they are putting forward something, they're not being liked, they're being scrutinised, and they're actually thinking, oh, OK, let's just maybe not do this. In a way, that's not authoritarian. That's actually something has been, you know, alleged. I think they actually are listening to the public, and they're making mistakes, and they're flipping it.
Mike in. So, Mike, are they listening to the public, or is Keir Starmer listening to his backbenchers who are frightened of losing the seats the next time?
Well, he's listening to everybody. That's Keir Starmer's problem. He's not a leader of men. I thought his performance in Prime Minister's questions was pathetic.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about that ridiculous and rather tawdry joke he told about the Kama Sutra.
Yeah.
Oh, more positions of the Kama Sutra. That's a 25-year-old rather smutty joke which comics used to use on late-night shows. He is actually so little in control of his party that the last person who said something to him, he immediately responds and does it. Now, the idea that, oh, well, Labour must be listening to the public because, you know, they turn back on so many things. How can any government go forward if it's going forward, backwards, 13 consecutive times? They haven't got a policy or a plan in its head. And he's obsessed by reform because he should be standing up in Parliament and telling the country what he's going to do as Prime Minister, what his vision is, what he hopes to achieve, instead of which he just tries to attack all his enemies, reform, of course, being the most significant one.
No, well, don't sit on the fence there, Mike. Fahima, do you want to come back on this one?
Look, right now, I'm not actually voting Labour, but I can see that...
Is that an exclusive for GB News?
Yes, I have changed...
You're not going to the Green Party, surely? Because I've got some medication in my bag if you want some.
Well, you know what? You guys cannot criticise and scrutinise any party right now, because they might be your next member, OK? You have 14 years of Conservatives now in your party. So at the end of the day, the reason why everyone's talking about this is because reform is now reform.
You've not denied the Green defection then?
Well, you've also got a Green Party member that has defected to your party as well.
Yeah.
So, no, I'm not denying that. I am actually leaning towards Zelensky, absolutely.
This is a guy who can hypnotise people and enhance
We've all got stories. We've all got stories.
Has he hypnotised you recently, Mike?
No, he hasn't. I met him recently at a TV show. He's a very engaging young man, full of really wacko ideas. But the way he comes over like a sort of stand-up comedian, you know, when he's giving him your points of view. But, I mean, to think that he might one day have some partial control in this country means even more people have got to look towards what does the right offer in opposition to the coalition that could be on the left. It's frightening.
And of course, Fahima, I think it's due to Starmer's weakness and pathetic performances in the Commons and his policies that a lot of people are leaning towards the Green Party.
Yes, that is true. But I do feel that he has been slightly shaken by the public and reform. And I think, like I said before, politics has never been like before, where everyone is speaking loudly and they are being heard. And I think that it never used to be like this, where the actual reactions were actually being met by people on top in government. And I think we have changed over time. And the new era, the new generation are speaking louder, are shouting louder, and they do want to see a difference. And I think even many people are even scrutinising reform right now because they're not performing the way that is
speaking and shouting louder because the government are so awful. There's never been a Prime Minister who's been so unpopular. There's never been a Labour Party that's been so unproductive. But no, the reason people are shouting is because they are terrified of what this country's going to end up as. Only this week, week, we've had an estimate that Mad Ed Miliband, I think...
And Mad Ed's not here to defend himself. He would say he's not mad, but carry on, Mike.
Excuse me, I think his net zero policies are mad, so I'll qualify it as that. I'm not accusing the man of being mad, right? But it's estimated they could cost the country in the long term £4.5 trillion. I mean, this is bankruptcy time. We'd be nothing. We'd be nothing at all if we suddenly start to decide, let's buy all our oil from Norway, who are drilling it in the North Sea, where we could drill it, but we don't. So let the Norwegians drill it, and we'll buy it off them at twice the price. I mean, crazy.
Is it madness? Is it madness?
Well, unfortunately, I think in the UK, in England, it has been disappointing where a lot of Western countries do rely outside its own. And that's what the fault is. That's why when we have, external wars, external factors, it does impact us straight after COVID with Ukraine and Russia as well, and continuously with, Israel and Gaza, and then obviously now with the rest of the world that's happening. So I do feel that, it's not just internal, it's not just, we need to start investing in our own. We need to start building, and we need to start having more reliance on our own. I'm not obviously for Brexit, but that's supposed to be something where we could have actually, benefited from. But if anything, the economy has turned completely, not completely for that, but many businesses and many high sort of business owners do claim that that is one of those kind of consequences.
Yeah, but the rest of Europe is struggling. Fahima,
some more than us.
And they're still in the EU.
Yeah, but even still, the UK and the EU would have been a lot better for us, even for employment. I mean, we are going to go on to the next subject with the NHS, but at the end of the day, and, what is really required with regards to putting things in place, but I really do feel...
But let's get back to Starmer, Fahima. What's your predictions for the May elections?
I think the Greens are going to be surprisingly on top.
And why don't the Greens ever talk about anything green anymore?
Well, again, they do talk about green, but then they're now aligning with what is actually their other policies, but bringing that to the forefront.
And which policy is attracting you to the Greens?
I think when it comes to the justice, equality, and the fact that, they are talking about affordability, okay? They're talking about taxes where we can actually see some sort of forwardness where maybe ordinary people are probably aligning with. I see that, a lot of the times when it comes to either Reform, Conservatives and anyone else, they seem to be on the same line. Yeah. And we don't want that. We've had that for 14 years. We don't need any more of that.
The problem with the Greens and all left-wing parties is they don't understand that the wealth of our nation is bred through capitalism, because unless the 27 million people in the private sector in this country are able to run their businesses properly, to earn money, to pay taxes, the whole system would collapse. But what Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor's doing is she's taking the endeavours of the 27 million in the private sector and giving it to people who work in the public sector, and also the 10 million people in this country who are economically inactive and could be for the rest of their lives.
The people that sit at home all day and not prepared to go and do a decent day's work.
Economically inactive is the way they're politely described.
We call them bone idle up in Ashfield.
I call them
I think that's quite unfair to label them in that way.
Well, they're bone idle, surely.
No, because there are so many factors why people are not working, and it is due to the government.
No, we talk about the able-bodied, Fahima, the people that can go to it, not the disabled, not the sick. No. The ones, there's a hardcore element in this country who refuse to get off the settee and go and do a decent day's work.
Because I guess the wages are not in line, with regards to what's happening.
But Fahima, I'm sorry.
I don't agree with it, but I would prefer to work, and I want to move forward. A lot of people, unfortunately, in this country, they don't. That's why we need people, unfortunately, from abroad, because they're actually willing to work. The people over here are not willing to work.
The welfare benefit system is a safety net, and it should be there for the people that Lee's talking about who need our help, from the able-bodied and those who can do it. The problem is now it's gained out by millions of people. Some 4 million people who will never work again in this country are just using that.
Guys, it's gone so quickly. We're going to have to come to the end of this very feisty debate. More of the same later in right versus left, but do not go away. Coming up next, we've got the CEO of the Business Travel Association, Clive Watton.
want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/your say. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/your say, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates,
5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5.
You got me good there. Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show.
It's not a bad brand.
Yeah.
Uncensored.
Very, very racy tonight on the unpredictable.
What did she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
Welcome back. It's time for Real World, Real People with Clive Ratton. You're the CEO of the Business Travel Association.
That's right, I am.
Yeah. That's a mouthful, isn't it?
It is quite a lot, yeah.
So, what does that involve, actually?
Well, it's really representing the business travel sector, and really kind of promoting how important business travel or travel for work is for the UK economy and getting involved in everything from
So
aviation.
is this like national travel and international travel?
Yeah, it's both. Yeah, very much promoting British businesses getting abroad. That's what our members do.
Well, let's talk about airports then.
Yes.
Because that's a big bugbear of mine. When you go to the airport, when I take my sons or a friend or a family member to the airport, back in the day you could just drop them off outside the terminal. Now they're stealing from you, they're thieving off you. You have to go through a barrier and they're taking 2 or 3, maybe a £5 off you just to drop somebody off. What's all that about?
Yeah, well, it's up to a tenner if you're going to Gatwick now.
Tenner?
Yeah, a tenner at Gatwick. So it's the biggest frustration ever because, as you rightly say, up until 2020 it was free. And the important thing to remember about this is that through your air ticket you're paying a passenger service charge, which effectively includes the use of their facilities at the airport. So that's rocking up. But clearly, post-pandemic, the airports were suffering a little bit, and they found this way of charging, and it's gone up and up and up. It started off at £3 and now up to £10. Heathrow's £7, Bristol's £8.50. And they claim, depending on who you speak to on the day, that it's either to reduce congestion, it's about making people make sustainable choices, or the latest one in Gatwick is about...
How does it reduce congestion when the same amount of people are going to the airport?
Well, that's the argument I put up all the time, is if you look at Heathrow, the arrivals by private car has remained at 52% pretty consistently, even since it started. So it's clearly just a revenue make. They put, we reckon there's about £300 million being made out of parking charges across all UK airports per annum. You put £1 on at Heathrow, it's about another 30 million in their bank straight away, roughly. They don't give the figures, so it's very hard to really identify how much is being spent. But your point about congestion is really interesting, because from a business travel point of view, you'll know that you kind of, most of your flights, you're going up 9 o'clock in the morning to go out early, so you've got to check in at 7.
Yeah.
You just can't get public transport from anywhere to get to that point. So, and you want to be dropped at the terminal. So, it's the only airports really in the world. There's very few others.
It's not just the drop-off charges. Everything about an airport is designed to rip you off, in my opinion. The prices, a pint of beer, you can have a traditional English breakfast for about 17 quid at some airports. Well, the same breakfast would probably be 5 or 6 quid in a greasy spoon where I'm from.
Yeah, well, it is a bit of a captive market, and it's the same as motorway service stations. But a lot of the airports going back over the years, we used to do a comparison with the nearest town. So a coffee in the local coffee shop in Slough versus one at Heathrow, and it used to be close. That's kind of faded away as well. So you can see the gap growing. You're quite right. Everything costs more. It's a captive market and truly expensive. And I think it's unfair on travellers, whether you're travelling for work or holiday.
And what can we do about it?
Well, from the BTA's point of view, we're kind of raising the campaign. We've put a charter out that we're working with to say cap it at £3 across all airports. Because, I mean, the important thing is we need great airports in the UK. We're an island nation, so we need great airports, and we do have great airports. So we kind of understand it's £3 and only have the charge between 9 and 5:30. So, that's the time where most people could possibly get public transport. Half price for EVs, because if they claim it's for sustainable reasons, they should do. There is one airport, Edinburgh, that do offer a discount.
Yeah, but the EV vehicles do more damage to the road than a normal vehicle.
Well, they're
heavier.
It's true, that's true. But I mean, in terms of making the right statements to people around that, and then equally, the taxi and private hire trade are getting hit by this massively, and saying you only get charged once a day like you do with the congestion.
Right, let's talk about travel tips, top travel tips. Me and my friend went away last year, and he was convinced, because the airplane was only R4. We were going to see a friend in Florida. He says, we'll get upgraded, we'll get into business class, we'll get the beds. And we didn't, and it was empty. Yeah. It was more or less empty. How do you get these free, so-called free upgrades we keep hearing about?
It's a bit of a urban myth that they happen too often. I haven't been in the airline industry for a number of times. It's really down to commercial reasons you get it. If there's an overbooking and you've got the right colour status is much of what it's about. You'll get moved up, but generally these days it doesn't happen too often. But what has kind of transpired in recent years is airlines are offering discounts to upgrade at the last minute. So paying a nominal amount.
So will they tell you about this when you
if you ask at check-in, you can say, is there any deals to upgrade? And sometimes you'll get an email through just a couple of days before you go to bid for a place and say, I'll offer £100, and sometimes they accept it, sometimes they don't. So there are ways of doing it, but the way of just getting on board and somebody saying to you, go on, Lee, just pop out the front, it doesn't happen very often.
No, it doesn't, does it? And then, of course, we've got the cheaper budget airlines, and I think you do pay, although you pay, it's much cheaper to travel with somebody. Sometimes the experience is not quite as great. I had one last year going to Spain on a Wizz Air flight. I mean, the flight was fine and the staff were great, but the actual experience of getting off the plane the other end, and it was awful.
Yeah, it's a change market. I'd say a bit old school. I love flying, and I love the romance of flying, and I started many years ago and loved the whole experience, still do. But the low-cost carriers have taken away some of that. It is just like getting on public transport on a bus. But it works well. It's opened up the world to thousands of people that might not be able to travel, but you get what you pay for, and
that's true.
That's the way it works, I guess.
So I mean, the first time I flew a long time ago, but I remember back in the day getting on the aeroplane, and you could smoke on the aeroplane. Can you remember when they had the curtains? You used to be able to draw the curtains at the back, and that was the smoking area. How things have changed.
I know, but the bit that you smoke, because I used to smoke as well, get on a plane, and there was one row, but the bit that always used to make me laugh, not was it smoking, you used to use Swan Vestas and light the air flame to light your cigarette up, and you think, how was that even allowed to happen? But it did. Times have changed a little bit around that now.
Yeah, and the aeroplanes I've noticed over the past probably 10 years, they're a lot quieter now. When you get them up, you can't hear the engines. It's great.
No, the evolution of the jet engine has been very quick considering what it is. And I've just actually got back from being away over the first week of that and coming back on one of the new 787s, and you hardly know the engine's moving and taking off, and it's just fabulous and really changed. And of course, much better from a emissions point of view as well, but still some way to go.
So obviously you've been from a lot of airports in the UK.
Yeah.
Which is your favourite? Which one would you go to? Which is your go-to airport?
Go-to airport. I'd say, despite my frustrations with Heathrow, I still like Heathrow. I think Gatwick do a really good job from that, but equally some of the smaller airports. I started my career working for BA at Birmingham Airport, so I've always got a soft spot for Birmingham Airport.
I don't like Birmingham. No. See, my nearest airport is East Midlands Airport, and then Birmingham, and the old Robin Hood Airport at Doncaster. But Birmingham, I always seem to have a bad experience there, whether it's roadworks, whether it's they're doing modernising the building. I just don't like it. I tend to go from airport.
I know what you mean, but as I say, it's got a bit of a place in my heart, so I spent my career there. So,
and us greedy, selfish MPs that work in Westminster, when we go abroad, I mean, I don't go abroad anymore with work because they kick me off the select committees. But the people who are on the select committees and other committees get the chance to travel. Or if you're a trade envoy, for example, you get the chance to travel all around the world. I went to some great places, I'm not going to lie. Singapore and Uruguay and the US and places like that. But if you do a night flight, they upgrade you to business class. Is it worth it?
Do you know what? It absolutely is if you can afford it. On a flight that is, you can get some sleep. I mean, some people can't. I've travelled so much over the years. I've got a routine that I do when I get on board on a night flight, and I will.
Do you always go business class?
No, not always go business class. Who I work for now is economy most of the time, and so I choose to do it myself. But it is a real difference when I used to work in the Middle East, and you fly back at 2 o'clock in the morning, you get on and in business class and you can sleep and you get up and go in and do a day's work. And I think that's the big difference. Everything else is nice to have.
Well, I've done both. I mean, transatlantic, I've done business class and just premium economy. And I mean, business class is nice because you get the fold down bed.
It is.
But you know what, last time I went, I did a premium economy. I had a few shots of single malt, sleeping tablet, out like a kite, and woke up on the runway coming back. So
that's my strategy as well. I just came back from Barbados this week on premium economy, and same thing, nice scotch and top of cruise and head down.
There you go, mate. That's great. Some
fantastic
great travel tips there from Clive Ratton. Coming up next, we've got a feisty debate with Mike Parry and Fahima Mohammed. Do not go away. Heathrow and Gatwick airports have defended their passenger drop-off charges following public criticism, saying the fees are intended to manage congestion, encourage the use of public transport and support sustainability goals.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/your say. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/your say, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pearce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock, only on GB News.
the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's time for Right versus Left. We've got Fahima back and Mike Porky Perry. Just had to separate them in the break. There's getting a little bit feisty there. Mike's still got his injured knee. I think you're sort of preying on that, aren't you, Fahima? It's going for his weak spot.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the debate today is, should the marriage of first cousins be banned, Mike?
Well, I think it should, personally. I mean, the figures are that the possibility of a genetic problem with your child is between 2 and 3% in what I call the population as a whole. Yeah. But it goes up to 4 to 6% if you have a first cousin marriage.
So it doubles?
Doubles, in fact, yeah. Now, my view is people say, well, that's still a small figure. No, if it's only a 1% chance of an increased possibility of some genetic problem, basically because when you go up the family pyramid like that, it means they've both got the same grandparents, then it shouldn't be allowed because it's a risk that doesn't need to be taken.
Fahima?
You know, if we're talking about risks, right, and we want to ban something, then we should really be consistent. And we're talking about children's health. Now, there are more statistics to show that, you know, mothers that are drinking alcohol and they have FASD, which is a neurodiversity condition.
I know what it is.
As well as, just for the public, and also for
that's
people...
That's a different problem altogether.
But it's the same thing.
No, but we're talking about a specific problem that could be sorted and changed. We're not going to say,
that
oh,
is
well,
exactly the same thing by your logic.
No, it's not, because
yes,
you're going on to another problem and we're discussing marriage between cousins.
I'm talking about children's health.
What you're doing, Fahima, you're using a bit of whataboutery,
Not really. I'm saying that you guys are not consistent when it comes to certain things, and even the Church of England has not banned first cousin marriages, okay? So in this country, we do not have a Christian state. We do not have anything when it comes to Christian laws, where it's actually even in our parliament. And when it comes to certain communities, I feel that they are targeted, even though they are not the priority on the NHS. The priority are people that are maybe at elderly age, and we need more